Welcome to the Crime for Sleep channel. Let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Story 1. She found it hidden under a floorboard, bound in leather and stained with mold. Each page chronicled someone's descent into paranoia. But the final entry was worse. It described her bedroom, her clothes, and exactly how her body would be found. I still remember the rain that night, not the dramatic downpour you might expect, but a gentle, persistent mist that clung to everything it touched. The kind that somehow seeps into your bones despite barely being visible in the glow of streetlights. Autumn in Millfield had always been this way, quiet, damp, forgettable, until Caroline Hayes changed everything. The call came in at 2:17 a.m. I know because I was staring at my bedside clock, counting the minutes until my alarm would sound. Sleep had become a luxury in recent years, a side effect of 2 decades in homicide investigation. The voice on the other end belonged to Officer Mercer, young and still untouched by the weight that eventually settles on all of us. Detective Sullivan, we have a situation at 1422 Willow Lane. Female victim, mid-30s, it's unusual. I've learned that when junior officers describe something as unusual, it's rarely good news. The scene was only 12 minutes from my house, a modest Victorian in what locals called the Garden District. It wasn't the kind of neighborhood where police tape typically appeared. The house stood silent amid a row of nearly identical structures, differentiated only by color and the occasional architectural flourish. Yellow light spilled from the upstairs windows, creating pools of gold in the misty darkness. 2 patrol cars were parked out front, their lights turned off, a small mercy for the neighbors who would soon have enough to gossip about. Officer Mercer met me at the door, his complexion slightly green beneath the porch light. She's upstairs, second door on the right. The roommate found her about an hour ago when she got home from her night shift. He hesitated. It's not bloody or anything, just wrong. The interior of the house felt ordinary, a living room with mismatched furniture, a small dining area with papers scattered across a table, a kitchen with dishes piled in the sink. The normalcy made what waited upstairs all the more disturbing. The wooden stairs creaked beneath my weight, each step deliberate and measured. At the top of the landing, I could see the open door, light spilling into the hallway. The room beyond was perfectly still. Caroline Hayes lay on her bed, positioned on her back with her hands folded neatly across her stomach. She wore a navy blue dress with small white flowers, her dark hair spread carefully across the pillow. Nothing about the scene suggested violence, no blood, no signs of struggle. She might have been sleeping if not for the unnatural stillness and the slight discoloration around her lips. No obvious cause of death, said the medical examiner, Dr. Levine, who had arrived shortly before me. Could be natural causes, could be something else. We won't know until the autopsy. What made the scene unusual sat on the bedside table, a leather-bound journal, its cover mottled with age and what appeared to be mold. It lay open to the final entry. The roommate says she found it yesterday, Officer Mercer explained, standing in the doorway as though reluctant to enter. Under a loose floorboard in the closet, she showed it to Hayes last night before leaving for work. I slipped on gloves and carefully turned the pages. The journal contained dozens of entries spanning what appeared to be several months. The handwriting started neat and controlled in the early pages, but grew increasingly erratic toward the end. The author described growing paranoia, the sensation of being watched, strange sounds in the night, typical manifestations of mental illness or extreme stress, until the final entry. It described in meticulous detail Caroline Hayes's bedroom, the position of her furniture, the navy dress with white flowers she would be wearing, the way her hair would be arranged on the pillow, and most disturbingly, how her body would be found peaceful as though sleeping, hands folded across her stomach. "The journal's old," I said, examining the binding. "At least 50 years, maybe more." "That's not possible," Mercer replied. "Look at the date on the last entry." I did. Yesterday's date was written at the top of the page in the same trembling hand that had described Caroline's death with such precision. Over the next 3 weeks, the case unfolded like a puzzle box where each solution revealed another mystery. The journal contained no name, no clear indication of its author. The handwriting matched no samples in our database. Forensic analysis showed the paper and binding were indeed decades old, yet the ink in the final entries was recent. Caroline's autopsy revealed no clear cause of death, no poison, no injury, no disease. She had simply stopped. The roommate, Emma Wells, became our primary focus. 29 years old, registered nurse, no criminal record. She had discovered the journal, shown it to Caroline, then left for her night shift. When she returned, she found exactly what the journal had predicted. "I thought it was just some weird relic from a previous tenant," Emma explained during our third interview, fingers trembling around her paper cup of station coffee. Caroline was into vintage stuff, collected old books. She seemed fascinated by it, not scared. "Did she read the final entry, the one that described her?" I asked. Emma's eyes filled with tears. She laughed about it, said it was creepy but obviously just a coincidence. The room description could fit lots of bedrooms in old houses like ours, and the dress, she wore it often. But it wasn't just the room or the dress. It was the precise arrangement of her body, the folded hands, the spread hair, details too specific to be coincidental. We searched the house thoroughly. Behind the loose floorboard where the journal had been found, we discovered a small cavity containing several items. A tarnished silver locket containing a lock of dark hair, a faded photograph of a young woman who resembled Caroline, and a newspaper clipping from 1974 about the unsolved death of a woman named Eleanor Marsh, found in her bed with no signs of violence, cause of death undetermined. The photograph showed Eleanor standing in front of the same house on Willow Lane, wearing a dress similar to the one Caroline had died in. The handwriting analysis finally came back with results that defied explanation. The earlier journal entries matched samples of Eleanor Marsh's writing from letters found in her sister's possession. The final entry, the one describing Caroline, matched no known samples. 4 months passed. The case remained officially open but effectively cold. Emma Wells moved away. The house on Willow Lane stood empty, a "for sale" sign gradually weathering in the front yard. I kept the journal in my desk drawer against protocol and my better judgment. Some nights I would open it, reading the increasingly desperate entries, searching for something I might have missed. The author described feelings of being followed, of time slipping away, of something ancient and patient closing in. In the margins of several pages were small, intricate drawings of spirals and eyes. Last night I found something new. A thin page had been stuck to another, unnoticed in our initial examination. It contained a single sentence. It moves through the journal to the reader. This morning I woke to find a loose floorboard in my bedroom that I've never noticed before. I haven't looked underneath it yet. I'm writing this account first, just in case. The rain outside my window is a gentle mist, barely visible in the glow of street lights. The kind that somehow seeps into your bones despite barely being there at all. I've been a detective for 20 years. I don't believe in the unexplainable. but tonight I'll sleep with my lights on, and tomorrow I'll return to Willow Lane one more time, because some mysteries don't want to be solved, some secrets refuse to stay buried, and sometimes the truth is written long before we discover it. The journal that described her death may be describing something else now, something that hasn't happened yet, something waiting in the spaces between what we know and what we fear to know. Story 2. I remember the first time I saw the house on Wicker Lane. It was autumn, the kind where golden light filters through trees just starting to shed their leaves. The property had been vacant for 9 months following the sudden relocation of the Mercer family. As a real estate appraiser in this quiet corner of western Massachusetts, I'd seen my share of abandoned homes, but something about this one seemed different. The colonial-style house itself was unremarkable white clapboard siding weathered by decades of changing seasons, black shutters hanging slightly askew. It was the yard that caught my attention, not the front, which had grown wild but in the typical way of neglected properties. It was the back garden, visible from the kitchen windows, that seemed to be concealing something beneath its overgrowth. The family left in quite a hurry, explained Dennis, the bank representative who'd accompanied me that day. His voice was flat, professional. Tax issues, from what I understand, they're settled in Arizona now. I nodded, making notes on my clipboard as we moved through the quiet rooms. My footsteps echoed on hardwood floors, the house emptied of furnishings but still holding the lingering scent of people who had once called it home. A faint trace of cinnamon, maybe laundry detergent. Mind if I check the backyard structures? I asked, although I was already moving toward the rear door. Standard procedure, outbuildings factor into property valuation. Outside, the October air carried a slight chill. The garden had once been well tended. I could make out raised beds now choked with weeds, a stone path nearly hidden beneath creeping vines. At the far end stood a wooden shed, roughly 12 by 16 feet, its cedar siding silvered with age. "That's just a garden shed," Dennis called from the doorway. "Previous owners used it for storage, I believe." I've always been thorough in my work. It's what made me successful in this field, attention to detail, leaving no stone unturned. I followed the overgrown path, pushing aside brambles that caught at my sleeves. The shed door hung slightly open, warped from moisture and neglect. The interior was dim, dust motes dancing in the thin shafts of light that penetrated through small, grimy windows. Garden tools hung from pegs along one wall, a rusted rake, shears, the skeletal frame of what might have once been a wheelbarrow. Nothing out of the ordinary. Until I noticed the interior door. It was incongruous, a heavy steel door fitted into the back wall of the wooden shed. The kind of door you might see in a bank vault or secure facility, not in a family's garden storage unit. It had been bolted shut from the outside, 3 heavy-duty locks securing it in place. I stood before it, my heart beating a little faster despite the professional detachment I pride myself on maintaining. Something about that door, solid, impenetrable, deliberately secured, felt wrong in this setting of domestic mundanity. "Dennis," I called out, my voice sounding strange to my own ears. "Did the bank documentation mention anything about a secure room in the shed?" He appeared in the doorway moments later, his silhouette backlit by the afternoon sun. "What are you talking about?" he asked, squinting into the dimness. I gestured to the metal door. "This seems excessive for storing garden shears, don't you think?" Dennis approached slowly, his leather shoes crunching on the dirt floor. When he saw the door, his expression changed subtly, a tightening around his eyes. That wasn't in any of the property documents, he said quietly. The proper procedure would have been to note it, photograph it, and continue with the appraisal. Perhaps recommend a contractor inspect it before listing. That's what I should have done. Instead, I found myself reaching for the bolts. We should see what's inside, I said, my voice calm and measured despite the strange tension building in my chest. For the appraisal. Dennis didn't stop me, but he didn't help either. He stood back, watching as I slid the first bolt, then the second, then worked the key lock with a small set of picks I carry for such contingencies. In my line of work, locked doors are common obstacles. The door opened with surprising ease, swinging inward on well-oiled hinges. The space beyond was small, perhaps 8 by 8 feet. No windows. The air inside was stale but not unpleasant. It had been sealed effectively. The room was empty save for 3 items: a thin mattress on the floor, a length of heavy chain bolted to the wall, and words scratched deeply into the wooden floorboards. Do not let her out. I stood in the doorway, the silence of the room pressing against my eardrums. Dennis remained behind me, his breathing audible in the stillness. What do you make of this? I asked, gesturing to the sparse contents. Dennis shook his head slowly. I don't know, could be anything. Kids playing around, someone's idea of a joke. But we both knew it wasn't. The chain was industrial grade, seriously anchored into the wall studs. The mattress, though dusty, showed signs of use, compressed areas where a body had lain, and those words, carved with what must have been desperate force into hardwood flooring, they weren't playful or casual. I crouched down, running my fingers over the jagged letters. They had been made with something sharp but improvised, perhaps a piece of the chain, worked back and forth until the wood gave way. We should call someone, I said finally, the police. Dennis hesitated. And tell them what? We found an empty room with a chain. There's no evidence of a crime here. He was right, technically. No blood, no body. Just an empty room that raised more questions than it answered. I took photographs anyway, documenting everything from multiple angles. The chain's anchor point, the worn mattress, the scratched message. Then we locked the steel door again, securing each bolt with a finality that felt significant somehow. The police were politely dismissive when I called later that day. Without evidence of an actual crime, there wasn't much they could do. They took my report, thanked me for my civic-mindedness, and that was that. The house on Wicker Lane sold 3 months later to a young family from Boston, a surgeon and his wife, their 2 small children. I drove by occasionally in those first few months, slowing as I passed. The new owners had cleared the garden, planted flowers. The shed remained standing, though freshly painted to match the house. I never told them what I'd found. Perhaps I should have, but what would I have said? That their quaint garden shed once held someone captive, that someone, the former owners, had been afraid enough of her to lock her away behind steel. It was 6 months after my discovery when I received a call from a detective with the state police. They'd found my report in their system and wanted to know more about what I'd seen at the Wicker Lane property. Why the interest now? I asked. There was a pause on the line. We've located the Mercer family in Arizona, the detective said. The parents and their son, but according to school records and birth certificates, there should be a daughter too. Emily Mercer, 17. The family claims she ran away before they moved, but there's no record of her anywhere after they left Massachusetts. I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. "The message," I said quietly. "It said do not let her out." "Yes," the detective replied. "We're sending a team to the property tomorrow with a warrant. I'd like you to meet us there if you could." I agreed, of course, but as I hung up the phone, I couldn't help wondering about the new family living in that house, about whether they'd discovered what lay behind that steel door, whether they'd read those desperate words carved into the floor. And I wondered about Emily Mercer, and who had been so afraid of letting her out, and why. I still drive by the house sometimes. The new owners have torn down the shed, built a playset for their children instead. Life goes on at the house on Wicker Lane, bright and normal on the surface. But I know what was hidden there, and somewhere out there, perhaps Emily Mercer knows too. Or perhaps she never left at all. Story 3, she hadn't used the landline in years, but when she tested it for fun, the machine blinked with a new message. A shaky voice whispered her full name, followed by a question: "Why did you bury me?" I've been investigating cold cases for 23 years now, the forgotten ones, the files that gather dust in evidence rooms across small-town America, but nothing prepared me for the Hartfield case, a mystery that began with an answering machine and ended somewhere I still struggle to comprehend. The day Rebecca Hartfield walked into my office, the late autumn rain tapped gently against my windows. The sound formed a soothing rhythm that almost made me miss the soft knock at my door. She was tall, composed, but her eyes betrayed the kind of sleeplessness I recognized all too well. She placed a small cassette tape on my desk before she even sat down. "I need to know if I'm losing my mind," she said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. Rebecca lived alone in her childhood home, a Victorian house on Maple Street that had been in her family for generations. 3 weeks earlier, while cleaning the attic, she found an old answering machine. Out of nostalgia, she plugged it in just to see if it still worked. The red light blinked, one new message. "The voice," she whispered, sliding the tape closer to me. "It sounds exactly like my brother Thomas." Thomas Hartfield had disappeared 15 years ago. His case had gone cold after 6 months of intensive investigation. No body, no crime scene, no resolution. Just a 27-year-old man who walked out of his apartment one Tuesday evening and vanished into thin air. I listened to the tape that afternoon, alone in my office as the rain continued its gentle percussion against the glass. The voice was barely audible, a whisper with electronic distortion, but the words came through clearly enough. "Rebecca Elizabeth Hartfield, why did you bury me?" The timestamp on the message was from 2 days before she found the machine. My first instinct was to dismiss it as a cruel prank, someone who knew about her brother, perhaps a local with a twisted sense of humor. But something in Rebecca's eyes, a particular kind of fear that can't be fabricated, made me take the case. I started where all good investigations begin, with the dust-covered file of Thomas Hartfield's disappearance. Detective Martin Scholes had headed the original investigation. Now retired and living just outside of town, he agreed to meet me at a small diner where the coffee came in thick white mugs and the waitress knew him by name. "That case," he said, stirring his coffee slowly, methodically, "never sat right with me. The sister was the last to see him alive, you know." According to the file, Rebecca had dinner with Thomas the night he disappeared. Nothing unusual about their meeting. They ate at Luigi's, paid the bill at 8:43 p.m. and parted ways in the parking lot. Security footage confirmed this timeline. Thomas's car was found parked at his apartment complex. No signs of struggle, no evidence of foul play. What never made sense, Scholes continued, his voice lowering as he leaned across the table, was the dirt. The forensic report noted trace amounts of a specific clay soil under Thomas's fingernails from samples taken from his bathroom during the initial investigation. The soil didn't match any samples from areas Thomas was known to frequent. It contained mineral properties consistent with the riverbed soil 15 miles outside of town, an area that had been thoroughly searched at the time. I visited the riverbed the following day. The early morning mist hovered just above the water's surface, creating a dreamlike quality to the landscape. The trees along the bank stood like silent witnesses, their leaves rustling softly in the gentle breeze. I walked slowly along the muddy shore, trying to see this place through the eyes of someone who might have brought Thomas here. 3 days into my investigation, Rebecca called me at 2:17 a.m. "It happened again," she whispered, her voice unsteady. "Another message." I drove to her house immediately. The Victorian loomed against the night sky, its ornate details hidden in shadow. Rebecca was waiting for me on the porch, wrapped in a cardigan despite the mild night. She looked smaller somehow, diminished by fear. The new message was shorter but more distinct. "Under the willow, you know which one." The Hartfield family property extended beyond the manicured lawn to include a small wooded area. At its center stood an ancient weeping willow, a childhood hideout for Rebecca and Thomas, according to the family photos that lined the hallway walls. We waited until daylight. The rational part of my mind said this was an elaborate hoax, but 23 years of investigating had taught me to listen to the quieter instincts that whispered beneath reason. As the first light of dawn filtered through the trees, Rebecca led me to the willow tree. The ground beneath it appeared undisturbed, generations of fallen leaves creating a soft, natural carpet. But as we circled the massive trunk, I noticed something odd about the root pattern on the eastern side. The earth there seemed more compact, more deliberately arranged. I called in a forensic team without explanation, simply stating it was related to a cold case. They arrived with minimal equipment, ground-penetrating radar, soil sampling kits, the kind of tools that wouldn't attract attention from neighbors. The technician's expression changed subtly as she studied the radar screen. "There's something here," she said quietly, "about 4 feet down." The excavation proceeded with painstaking slowness. Each layer of soil was carefully removed, documented, analyzed. By late afternoon, the team uncovered what appeared to be fabric, degraded by time and elements, but unmistakably a piece of clothing. By sunset, we found human remains. The forensic examination would later confirm what we already suspected. Thomas Hartfield had been buried beneath the willow tree for 15 years. The cause of death, blunt force trauma to the back of the skull. Rebecca sat on the porch steps as the coroner's van drove away, her face expressionless. She hadn't spoken since they uncovered the first evidence of her brother's remains. "I don't understand," she finally said. "How could he call me? How could he know?" The investigation shifted direction. We examined Rebecca's movements around the time of Thomas's disappearance. We interviewed old friends and colleagues. We reconstructed the last known day of Thomas Hartfield's life with meticulous precision. The answer came from an unexpected source. Eleanor Mercer, Rebecca and Thomas's elderly aunt, had been living in a memory care facility for the past decade. When I visited her, the nurses warned me that her lucidity came and went like the tide. "Oh, Thomas," she said when I mentioned his name, her eyes suddenly clear and focused. He and Rebecca had such terrible fights about the inheritance. He was going to sell the house, their mother's house. Rebecca couldn't bear the thought. No record of this dispute existed in the original investigation files. A deeper search revealed that Thomas had indeed consulted a real estate attorney 2 weeks before his disappearance. The family home, the Victorian where Rebecca still lived, had been left equally to both siblings. Thomas wanted to sell, Rebecca refused. As for the phone messages, technology provided a more mundane explanation than supernatural intervention. The answering machine had been connected to a phone line that Rebecca believed was disconnected, but was actually still active. A voice analysis confirmed that the messages were heavily distorted recordings, not from Thomas, but from the original investigation 15 years ago. Someone had spliced together Rebecca's interview tapes to create the ghostly communications. The fingerprints on the answering machine belonged to only one person, Rebecca Hartfield. I confronted her on another rainy afternoon, much like the day she first came to my office. She sat across from me, still composed, still with those sleepless eyes. "I never meant to hurt him," she said, her voice soft but clear. "We argued under the willow. He pushed me. I pushed back. He fell. His head hit the exposed root. It was an accident." The burial was not. Rebecca Hartfield was charged with second-degree murder and obstruction of justice. But the most chilling aspect of the case wasn't the crime itself. It was the elaborate performance that followed. Rebecca had created the ghostly messages herself, using old recordings. She had come to me, knowing I would investigate, knowing I would eventually find her brother's remains. "After 15 years, I just needed someone to know," she told me during her final interview. "I needed him to be found." As I closed the Hartfield file for the last time, I couldn't help but wonder about the weight of unspoken truths, how they pressed down on us over the years until we can no longer bear them alone. Rebecca had carried her brother to the willow tree 15 years ago, and in the end, she had engineered the perfect circumstances to release herself from that burden, one carefully crafted message at a time. Some cases end with justice, others end with understanding. The voice on the answering machine led to both, a ghost created not from beyond the grave, but from the depths of guilt that had finally found its voice. Story 4, I remember the day we found it, the trapdoor. It was spring, that peculiar time when the air fills with both warmth and precipitation, creating a heaviness that seems to slow everything down. I had been called to investigate what was initially reported as a simple breaking and entering in the quiet suburb of Oakwood Heights. The neighborhood was known for its immaculate lawns and the kind of silence that only money can buy. The house belonged to Alina Wakefield, a woman in her early 30s who had recently moved in after finalizing her divorce. She greeted me at the door with eyes rimmed red from what I assumed was a combination of fear and lack of sleep. Her voice trembled slightly as she led me through the colonial-style home, past framed photographs still waiting to be hung and boxes half unpacked. "I was organizing the master bedroom closet," she explained, her fingers fidgeting with the sleeve of her cardigan. "That's when I noticed it." The walk-in closet was spacious, lined with built-in shelving that smelled faintly of fresh paint. Alina pointed upward, and there it was, a perfect square outline in the ceiling, approximately 3 feet by 3 feet. What made it peculiar were the nails hammered into each corner, as if someone had deliberately sealed it shut. "This house was built in 1987, I said, more to myself than to her as I examined the ceiling. An attic access point would make sense, but not one sealed like this. I retrieved a ladder from my vehicle and carefully removed the nails one by one. They came out with unexpected ease, as though they had been recently hammered in. When I pushed against the panel, a folding ladder cascaded down, nearly striking me. It was an attic ladder, the kind that telescopes neatly into the ceiling space when not in use. "Did you know there was an accessible attic space?" I asked the leaner. She shook her head. The real estate disclosure only mentioned storage in the garage and basement, nothing about an attic. With my flashlight in hand, I ascended the ladder. The beam cut through the darkness of the space above, illuminating dust particles dancing in the air. The attic was almost entirely empty, save for what appeared to be a small, sectioned-off area in the corner. As I moved closer, the floorboards creaked beneath my weight, each sound amplified in the stillness. The sectioned-off space contained 3 items: a simple cot with a thin mattress, a battery-operated lantern that still worked when I tested it, and on the wall, this is what made my skin prickle with unease, a collage of photographs. I moved closer, my breath catching in my throat. Each photograph showed Alina's bedroom from various angles. Some captured her sleeping form, the sheets tangled around her legs. Others showed her changing clothes, reading in bed, or simply standing by the window, staring out at the night. Based on her different outfits and the changing light patterns, these photos spanned weeks, possibly months. "Detective," Alina's voice echoed from below. "Is everything okay up there?" I didn't answer immediately. My mind was processing what I was seeing. Someone had been living in her attic, watching her, documenting her most private moments. And based on the recently used appearance of the lantern and the unwrinkled bedding on the cot, this wasn't an abandoned setup from years past. "Ma'am," I finally responded, my voice deliberately calm, "I think you should stay downstairs for now. Call the number on my card and ask for Officer Martinez to come over immediately." As I waited for backup to arrive, I examined the photographs more closely. They were taken with a high-quality camera, printed on premium photo paper. This wasn't the work of an opportunistic vagrant or a teenage thrill-seeker. This was methodical, patient observation. The most recent photo, based on Alina's outfit, appeared to have been taken just 2 days prior. The investigation that followed was extensive. We dusted for fingerprints, collected DNA samples, and interviewed neighbors. Security cameras from houses across the street revealed nothing unusual, no strangers entering or leaving Alina's home at odd hours. The previous homeowners, a retired couple who had moved to Arizona, seemed genuinely shocked when questioned about the attic space. According to them, they had used it only for holiday decoration storage and had never sectioned off any area. Alina moved out that same day, unable to stomach the violation. I couldn't blame her. The idea of someone watching you in your most vulnerable moments, inhabiting your home while remaining unseen, it's the kind of invasion that leaves no visible wounds but cuts deeper than any physical attack. The fingerprints yielded no matches in our database. The DNA analysis would take weeks. In the meantime, we installed surveillance equipment throughout the house, hoping the watcher would return to their perch. 3 weeks passed with no activity. The house remained empty, with Alina staying at her sister's place across town. Then, on a rainy Tuesday night, the silent alarm we had installed in the attic was triggered. I was first on the scene, approaching the house with my weapon drawn. The front door remained locked, as did all windows and other entry points. Whatever had triggered the alarm, the intruder had either used a key or had never left in the first place. With 2 other officers, we systematically cleared the house, room by room, until we reached the master bedroom closet. The attic ladder was down, extending its invitation into the darkness above. We could hear faint movements, someone shifting their weight on the old wooden boards. "Police, come down with your hands visible," I commanded, my voice firm despite the adrenaline coursing through me. There was a moment of silence, then the sound of something heavy being dragged across the floor above. Before we could ascend, a figure appeared at the top of the ladder, a man in his 40s, thin but wiry, with eyes that seemed too large for his face. He descended slowly, his hands raised as instructed. Later, during interrogation, he would reveal little about himself. His name was Raymond Mercer, and he had no prior criminal record. He had worked as a contractor for the company that renovated the house before a leaner moved in. During the renovation, he had created the hidden living space, installing the sealed trapdoor that could only be opened from below. "I just wanted to watch her," he said, his voice eerily calm. "I wasn't going to hurt her, I just needed to be close." What disturbed me most wasn't the elaborate setup or even the violation of privacy. It was the utter normalcy with which Mercer described his actions, as if what he had done was simply an unusual hobby rather than a criminal obsession. Alina never returned to the house. It remained on the market for months, the disclosure now including details of the incident that had taken place there. Eventually, it sold for well below market value. Sometimes, on quiet nights when sleep eludes me, I find myself thinking about that house. I wonder about the new owners, whether they sleep soundly beneath their ceilings. I wonder if they ever look up and question what might be watching from above. Most of all, I wonder about the spaces we cannot see, the thin barriers between our private worlds and those who wish to intrude upon them. Because the most terrifying truth I learned from the case of the trapdoor wasn't about Raymond Mercer or his obsession. It was the realization that our sense of security is often nothing more than an illusion, a comforting story we tell ourselves as we drift off to sleep, unaware of the eyes that might be watching from just a few feet away, separated only by a layer of drywall and silence. Story 5, the cardboard box sat on my desk, unremarkable in every way except for one detail that made the hair on my arms stand on end. I ran my fingertips over the label, tracing the letters of Sarah Winter's name, her name, printed neatly as both sender and recipient. No postage, no postmark, just her name, her address, appearing twice on a package that shouldn't exist. Outside my office window, evening shadows stretched across the parking lot of our small-town police station. The radiator hummed softly in the corner, fighting against the first chill of October. I'd been about to leave when Officer Davis placed the box on my desk with a concerned look in his eyes. "Detective Ellis," he'd said, his voice low. "Ms. Winters brought this in about an hour ago. Said it was left on her porch sometime during the day. She seemed rattled." Now I sat alone with the opened package, the contents laid out before me like pieces of a puzzle I wasn't sure I wanted to solve. A delicate gold necklace with a small heart pendant rested on the worn surface of my desk, its chain coiled into a perfect circle. Beside it, a photograph, its edges blackened and curled from flame, showed a young girl with blonde pigtails standing next to a swing set. Her face was mostly untouched by the fire that had consumed the rest of the image. And then there was the note, written in neat, precise handwriting on cream-colored stationery. "Let's not do this again." The necklace caught the soft glow of my desk lamp, throwing tiny reflections against the wall. According to Sarah, she'd lost it 25 years ago when she was only 8 years old. A birthday gift from her grandmother that had disappeared during a family camping trip at Lake Mercer. She'd cried for days, she told me, voice trembling even now at the memory. I picked up my voice recorder and pressed the small red button, the soft click echoing in the quiet room. Case number 22487, Detective James Ellis. October 12th, 9:42 p.m. Interview with Sarah Winters regarding suspicious package. Her voice on the recording was steady but threaded with unease. I don't understand how anyone could have this necklace. We searched everywhere back then. My parents even hired a diver to look in the lake where we thought I might have dropped it while swimming. I paused the playback and picked up the photograph again. Sarah had confirmed it was her in the picture, taken the summer she was 7, a year before the camping trip. The swing set was in the backyard of their old house on Maple Street, a house they'd moved away from shortly after that summer. I don't remember anyone taking this particular photo, she'd said, her brow furrowed. And why burn it? What is someone trying to tell me? I leaned back in my chair, the leather creaking softly beneath my weight. Outside, the streetlights flickered on one by one, pools of amber light appearing in the growing darkness. In the 17 years I'd worked as a detective in Cedar Grove, I'd never encountered anything quite like this. Objects from someone's past, arranged with such deliberate care, delivered like a message without words. The burned photograph suggested anger, perhaps, revenge. The necklace spoke of patience, of something kept for decades. And that note, "Let's not do this again," not a threat exactly, but a warning. A reference to something that had already happened once. The following morning found me in the dusty basement of the county records office, surrounded by cardboard boxes of old police reports. The clerk, Mrs. Hanson, had raised an eyebrow when I requested files related to the Winters family from the late 1990s. "Something serious?" she asked, adjusting her reading glasses. "Just following a lead," I replied, keeping my tone casual. "Probably nothing." The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as I carefully turned the brittle pages of reports filed more than 2 decades ago. Most were mundane: a bicycle theft, a noise complaint, a fender bender in the grocery store parking lot. But then my fingers stopped on a report filed in August 1997, a missing persons case that had been quickly resolved. Sarah Winters, age 7, reported missing by her parents on August 17th. Found safe 26 hours later in an abandoned shed near Lake Mercer, approximately 3 miles from the Winters residence. The girl was unharmed but disoriented. She claimed to have no memory of how she got there or who had taken her. I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the basement's perpetual cold. The photograph in the package had been taken that same summer, just weeks before her disappearance. I pulled out my phone and dialed Sarah's number, the sound of each tone hanging in the silent archive room. "Ms. Winters, Detective Ellis here. There's something I need to ask you about, something from 1997. The silence on the other end stretched for several seconds. "I was wondering when you'd find that," she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I was hoping you wouldn't." 3 days later, I sat across from Sarah in a small cafe on the outskirts of town, away from prying eyes and curious ears. Steam rose from her untouched coffee as rain tapped gently against the windows. Her fingers nervously twisted a napkin into tight spirals. "I started remembering things about a year after it happened," she explained, her eyes fixed on the table between us. "Just fragments at first, a voice, the smell of pine and something metallic, the sound of a door closing." She paused, taking a shallow breath. "My parents took me to a therapist who specialized in trauma, Dr. Levine. He told them it might be better if I didn't remember, that some doors are better left closed." I nodded, keeping my expression neutral even as questions multiplied in my mind. "And what do you remember now?" I asked. Sarah's eyes met mine, clear and resolute despite the fear I could see behind them. I remember a room with walls covered in photographs, pictures of me playing in our yard, walking to school, at the lake with my family, hundreds of them like some kind of shrine. Her voice remained calm, but her knuckles whitened around the twisted napkin, and I remember a voice saying that if I told anyone, he'd come back for me, that next time he'd keep me forever. The rain grew heavier outside, drumming against the roof. I thought of the note again, "Let's not do this again." Not a warning from a stranger, but a reminder of a threat made long ago. "Do you remember his face?" I asked. She shook her head slowly. "No, but I remember his hands. They had burned scars across the knuckles." The investigation took us down paths long overgrown by time. Dr. Levine had passed away in 2011. The original detective on Sarah's case had retired to Florida. The abandoned shed near Lake Mercer had been torn down years ago to make way for vacation homes. But some threads remained for us to pull. Old photographs from neighborhood gatherings showed faces I cross-referenced with county records, school employees, local business owners, anyone who might have had access to Sarah's world as a child. And then there was the necklace itself. Under magnification, I found a tiny mark etched into the back of the heart pendant. Not a jeweler's mark, but something added later, crude but deliberate. 3 small numbers, 237. It was Sarah who made the connection. "Room 237, she said when I showed her. "At the old Pine Woods Motel. It closed down years ago, but it was on the route between our house and the lake." Her voice grew distant. I remembered something else. The ceiling of the room where he kept me had water stains shaped like animals. I made up stories about them to keep myself from being scared. The Pine Woods Motel had been demolished in 2008. But county records showed it had been owned by a man named Victor Reese until 2005. A man with no prior criminal record. A man who had worked as a maintenance supervisor at Sarah's elementary school from 1995 to 1998. A man who, according to hospital records from 1994, had been treated for second-degree burns on both hands after an accident with a furnace. The final piece fell into place when we obtained Reese's current address from DMV records, a small apartment above a hardware store in a neighboring town. When we executed the search warrant, the apartment was empty. Reese had vanished, but what we found inside turned my blood cold. One wall was covered with photographs of Sarah Winters, not just from her childhood, but recent ones. Sarah shopping at the local grocery store, Sarah collecting her mail, Sarah leaving for work in the morning, years of surveillance hidden in plain sight. And in a shoebox in the closet, we found newspaper clippings about her disappearance from 1997, along with a small golden key that matched nothing in the apartment. We never found Victor Reese. His car was discovered abandoned at a bus station 50 miles away. Security footage showed him boarding a bus heading south, but the trail went cold after that. The key remains in our evidence locker, its purpose unknown. Sarah Winters moved away from Cedar Grove the following month. She didn't tell anyone where she was going, not even me. The last time I saw her, she handed me an envelope. "If another package arrives for me," she said, "or if he's ever found, please call this number." I still keep that envelope in my desk drawer, unopened. Some nights when I'm alone in the office, I find myself staring at it, wondering if we truly closed the case or merely turned the page to a chapter we haven't read yet. The box with Sarah's name on it sits in our evidence room now, its contents cataloged and sealed away. but sometimes in the quiet hours when the station is nearly empty, I think about those 3 words on that simple note, "Let's not do this again." And I wonder if somewhere Victor Reese is crafting another package, writing another name on another label, preparing to revisit a door that someone else thought was forever closed. Story 6, she was vacuuming when she spotted writing under the bed frame. It was a list, names all crossed out except for the last one, hers. Beneath her name was a scribbled word, "Tonight." I remember the first time I visited Emma Caldwell's apartment. The late September air had that peculiar stillness to it, caught between summer's last breath and autumn's approaching chill. The kind of evening where sound travels differently, muted, almost hesitant. I stood in the doorway of apartment 7B, my leather notebook heavy in my hand, watching as the crime scene technicians moved with deliberate slowness across the beige carpet. The vacuum cleaner still stood in the center of the bedroom, its cord stretched taut from the wall socket. A simple household appliance, now the silent witness to the beginning of our investigation. Detective Liu, my partner of 3 years, knelt beside the bed, her flashlight beam illuminating the exposed wooden slats of the bed frame. I joined her, the floorboards creaking softly beneath my weight. "She found it while climbing," Liu whispered, her voice barely disturbing the stillness of the room. "See here." The beam of light revealed what Emma had discovered just hours before she called us. Written in black permanent marker on the underside of the bed frame was a list, 7 names, each one precisely printed and then crossed out with a single deliberate line, except for the last name, Emma Caldwell, and beneath it, that single word that had prompted her frantic call to the station, "Tonight." I ran my fingers lightly over the wood, feeling the slight indentations where the marker had pressed harder on certain letters. The handwriting was neat, methodical, not rushed. This wasn't a spontaneous act. "How long had she been living here?" I asked, my voice automatically matching Liu's hushed tone. 3 months, moved in after her divorce. Liu stood up slowly, her knees popping slightly. Previous tenant was a grad student, left town 6 months ago. The apartment told its own story as we moved through it. Emma was organized, particular, books arranged by color on the shelves, mail sorted into neat stacks on the kitchen counter, a single coffee mug in the dish drainer positioned to dry perfectly upright, the life of someone attempting to create order after disruption. We found Emma herself at the neighbor's apartment, hands wrapped around a mug of tea that had long gone cold. Her fingers trembled slightly as I sat across from her, the distance between us measured in more than just the coffee table that separated us. "I never would have seen it if I hadn't dropped my earring," she explained, her voice steady despite her shaking hands. "It rolled under the bed. When I went to retrieve it, I noticed the writing." Emma was in her mid-30s, with a kind of face that seemed perpetually caught between expressions, as if she was always on the verge of a smile or a frown, but never quite committing to either. Her dark hair was pulled back, revealing a small scar near her temple that she absently touched as she spoke. "Do you recognize any of the other names?" I asked, turning my notebook toward her. I had copied down the list. Janet Winters, Michael Donovan, Sarah Peterson, Thomas Hall, Rebecca Chen, Andrew Park, Emma Caldwell tonight. Emma's eyes moved down the list slowly, deliberately, as if each name required individual consideration. Then she shook her head. "No, none of them. I tried searching them online before I called you, but..." She trailed off. "But what?" Liu prompted gently. "They're all so common, too many results, I couldn't be sure." Back at the station, the soft blue glow of computer screens replaced the amber light of Emma's neighbor's apartment. The building was quieter at this hour, with only the occasional ring of a distant phone or the soft shuffling of papers breaking the silence. I typed each name methodically into our database, the clicking of the keyboard creating a rhythm that matched my breathing. Janet Winters was our first confirmation, reported missing 3 years ago from a town 60 miles north. Her case had gone cold after 2 months of investigation. No body was ever found. Michael Donovan followed a similar pattern, missing 14 months ago from a neighboring county. Then Sarah Peterson, Thomas Hall, Rebecca Chen, Andrew Park, 6 people seemingly unconnected, all reported missing over the span of 3 years. All cases unsolved, all investigations eventually shelved. It could be a coincidence, Liu suggested, but the tone of her voice betrayed her disbelief in her own words. We both knew better. 6 names, all missing persons, all crossed out. And Emma Caldwell, very much present and alive, her name uncrossed, waiting. We requested protective surveillance for Emma that night. 2 officers in an unmarked car across from her apartment building. Liu and I took the first shift. The engine of our vehicle turned off, windows cracked just enough to let in the cool night air. The apartment building stood like a sentinel against the darkening sky, lights going out one by one as residents settled into their evening routines. "What connects them?" Liu murmured, more to herself than to me. "Different ages, different occupations, 3 women, 3 men, no apparent relationship to each other." I flipped through my notes again, feeling the weight of what we didn't know pressing down on me. "The bed," I finally said. "We need to know more about the bed." A call to Emma's landlord revealed that the furniture in the apartment was included in the lease. The bed had been there for at least 5 years, through 3 different tenants. The landlord didn't recall where it had been purchased. It had come with the building when he bought it as an investment property. As midnight approached, the streets grew quieter. Occasionally a car would pass, its headlights briefly illuminating our faces before plunging us back into shadow. Emma's apartment remained lit, the silhouette of her figure occasionally passing in front of the window. She was pacing. "She shouldn't stay there," I said, checking my watch for what felt like the 100th time. "She refused to leave," Liu reminded me. "Said she wouldn't be chased out of her own home." At 2:17 a.m., the power went out on the entire block. One moment, the streetlights cast their pale glow across the pavement. The next, darkness enveloped us like a sudden fog. Emergency protocols kicked in immediately. Liu radioed for backup while I rushed toward Emma's building, flashlight in one hand, service weapon in the other. The stairwell was pitch black, my flashlight beam creating strange, elongated shadows as I ascended to the 7th floor. The silence was absolute, broken only by my controlled breathing and the soft sound of my shoes against the steps. When I reached Emma's door, I found it slightly ajar. "Emma," I called, pushing the door open wider. "Police, are you all right?" The beam of my flashlight cut through the darkness of her apartment, revealing furniture exactly as it had been earlier that day. Nothing seemed disturbed. I moved toward the bedroom, the hairs on the back of my neck standing on end. The vacuum cleaner had been moved. It now stood perfectly parallel to the bed, its cord wrapped neatly around the handle. And on the bed itself, a single sheet of paper with a message written in the same neat handwriting we'd seen on the bed frame. "Not tonight after all, but soon." We never found Emma Caldwell that night. The security footage from the building's lobby showed her leaving voluntarily at 1:45 a.m., half an hour before the power outage. She carried a small suitcase and walked with purpose, No signs of distress, no indication of coercion. She simply walked out of frame and vanished. In the days that followed, we traced the histories of the 6 crossed-out names on the list. Different cities, different lives, but one common thread emerged. All of them had moved into new apartments shortly before their disappearances. All of them had reported strange occurrences. Items moved while they were out, the sensation of being watched, unexplained noises. We found the bed manufacturer based on a small label attached to the frame's underside. The model had been discontinued 7 years ago. They had sold thousands of identical beds to furniture outlets across 3 states. 3 months after Emma's disappearance, a new tenant moved into apartment 7B. The landlord had replaced the bed, the old one disposed of despite our instructions to preserve all evidence. The new tenant lasted exactly 2 weeks before moving out abruptly, leaving no forwarding address. To this day, when I have trouble sleeping, I find myself wondering about those names on the list, about Emma Caldwell, about the word tonight that became not tonight after all, but soon. I wonder about the new list that might be forming somewhere, written in that same careful hand, under another bed frame in another apartment. I wonder whose name sits at the bottom now, uncrossed, waiting. And I wonder when they're vacuuming or retrieving a dropped earring, or simply going about the ordinary moments of their lives, will they look up in time? Story 7. I remember the cool touch of metal against my fingertips as I turned the small screwdriver, removing the faceplate of the light switch that had been flickering for weeks. It was a Tuesday afternoon in late October, the kind where golden autumn light slants through half-open blinds, casting long shadows across hardwood floors. My home, a modest craftsman I'd purchased just 4 months prior, had been revealing its quirks and imperfections gradually, like a shy new acquaintance. The switch in the hallway leading to my bedroom had developed an inconsistent stutter, sometimes requiring multiple attempts before the light would flicker to life. As someone who prefers to handle minor repairs myself, I'd shut off the breaker and set about investigating the issue with methodical patience. Should be simple enough, I muttered to myself, my voice absorbed by the empty hallway. The faceplate came away easily, revealing the expected tangle of wires, white, black, and a copper ground, nothing unusual at first glance. But as I gently pulled the switch mechanism forward to examine the connections, something caught against the back of the electrical box, something that shouldn't have been there. A small rectangle, secured with what appeared to be electrical tape, had been pressed against the rear wall of the junction box. No bigger than my thumbnail, black plastic, with a metal connector visible at one end. A USB drive. I carefully extracted it, feeling a slight resistance as the aged tape reluctantly released its grip. The device was lightweight, unremarkable, the kind you might receive as a promotional item or purchase for a few dollars at any electronics store. No identifying marks, no label, just a small, black rectangle that had no business being hidden inside my wall. For several minutes I simply held it, turning it over in my palm, trying to construct a reasonable explanation for its presence. Had the previous owner used it as impromptu storage? Was it some electrician's unusual signature, like artists who hide their initials in plain sight? The questions multiplied, each one more unsettling than the last. After completing the repair, a loose wire connection had been the culprit all along. I sat at my kitchen table, the USB drive placed carefully before me like a small, dark artifact. My laptop hummed to life, and I hesitated only briefly before inserting the device. A single file appeared, a video file labeled only with a string of numbers that after a moment's consideration I recognized as a date, 6/12/2023, 8 months ago, 4 months before I had moved in. With a single click, the video began to play. No sound, just grainy footage that made my breath catch in my throat. It was my kitchen, the very room I was sitting in. The angle was from above, likely from where the smoke detector now hung, capturing the entirety of the space. The countertops were different then. The previous owner had installed granite where I now had butcher block. The walls were a pale yellow instead of the soft gray I'd painted them, but it was unmistakably the same space. The timestamp in the corner ticked forward as I watched a woman move through the kitchen. Dark hair pulled back, mid-40s perhaps, dressed in casual clothes, the previous owner, I assumed. Patricia Geller, according to my closing documents. She moved with purpose, preparing a meal, occasionally glancing at her phone, unaware of the electronic eye tracking her routine. I watched for nearly 20 minutes as she cooked, ate, cleaned, and eventually left the frame. The video continued for another hour, empty kitchen, occasional shadows passing through, the light changing as evening approached. Then it ended as abruptly as it had begun. I sat motionless, trying to process what I'd seen. Someone had installed a hidden camera in this house before I moved in. Someone had recorded the previous owner without her knowledge. And someone had removed the camera but left the evidence behind, tucked away where it should never have been found. Detective Ramsey, the voice on the other end of the line, sounded tired, the kind of weariness that comes from years of hearing other people's problems. I'd called the non-emergency police line and had been transferred twice before reaching someone in the appropriate department. "I'm calling because I found something unusual in my home," I began, trying to sound calm and rational. A USB drive hidden inside a light switch with surveillance footage of the previous owner. There was a pause, the soft sound of typing in the background. "Your address?" Detective Ramsey asked. I provided the information, followed by my name and contact details. The typing continued. "Ms. Geller," he said finally, "you purchased the property from Patricia Geller, correct?" "Yes," I confirmed, surprised by his immediate recognition of the name. "Do you know her?" Another pause, longer this time. When Detective Ramsey spoke again, his tone had shifted subtly. "Ms. Geller filed several reports of suspected stalking in the months before she sold her home and relocated. Nothing we could substantiate at the time, no clear evidence, no identifiable suspect. She reported unusual occurrences, items moved slightly out of place, the feeling of being watched, occasional unexplained noises." My skin prickled as I glanced around my kitchen, her kitchen, seeing it suddenly through new eyes. "We conducted a thorough investigation," he continued, including a sweep for surveillance devices, found nothing. Eventually, Ms. Geller decided to move, said she couldn't stay in a place where she no longer felt safe. I looked down at the USB drive on my table, physical evidence of fears, dismissed as paranoia. "I'd like to bring this in," I said, "and I think you should contact Ms. Geller." 3 days later, I sat across from Detective Ramsey in an interview room that looked exactly as one might expect: functional furniture, muted colors, the subtle but unmistakable feeling of countless difficult conversations having taken place within these walls. "We've analyzed the drive," he said, sliding a folder across the table. "The footage dates back nearly a year, multiple videos all from different angles in the house, kitchen, living room, hallway, even the master bedroom. My stomach tightened. The drive I'd found had contained only one file. There were more. "Have you found others?" I asked. "Not yet," he admitted, "but we're conducting a full sweep of your property tomorrow, with your permission. We've also reached out to Ms. Geller. She's understandably disturbed by the confirmation of her suspicions." "Do you have any suspects?" Detective Ramsey's expression remained carefully neutral. "We're looking into several possibilities, the most obvious being individuals with legitimate access to the home, contractors, real estate agents, home inspectors." "The home inspector," I echoed, remembering the man who had spent hours examining every corner of the property before I purchased it. Bradley something. He spent a long time checking the electrical systems. The detective made a note. "We'll look into it. In the meantime, I'd recommend you stay elsewhere just until we complete our investigation." That night in the quiet of my sister's guest room, I couldn't help but imagine the hidden eyes that might still be watching my empty house. Every corner, every shadow suddenly seemed a potential hiding place for tiny electronic observers. I thought about Patricia Geller, whose fears had been validated too late after she'd already abandoned her home to escape an invisible intruder. 2 weeks later, the case broke open. Bradley Wentworth, the home inspector I'd mentioned to Detective Ramsey, was taken into custody. A search of his home revealed dozens of USB drives meticulously labeled with addresses. Patricia Geller's wasn't the only home he had been monitoring. As an inspector, he had legitimate reasons to examine every inch of the properties he visited, including electrical fixtures and smoke detectors, the perfect cover for placing tiny cameras. The most disturbing discovery came from his computer. A detailed spreadsheet tracking the routines of the women he surveilled, notes on their habits, their schedules, their behaviors when they believed themselves unobserved. He had been watching, categorizing, collecting private moments like specimens. I was allowed to return home after a thorough sweep confirmed that all surveillance devices had been removed. The light switch in the hallway now works perfectly, but I still pause sometimes when I flip it, remembering the small black rectangle that changed everything. I've replaced every smoke detector, every light fixture, scrutinized every unusual crack or seam in the walls. Patricia Geller and I have spoken several times. There's an unusual bond that forms between people connected by such an experience. She, the unwitting subject, I, the accidental discoverer. We've both had to reconcile with the violation of spaces we once considered safe. "Do you feel it too?" she asked during our last conversation. "That lingering sensation of being watched?" I did, even knowing the cameras were gone. The feeling remains, a phantom presence, a psychological imprint that time may fade but never completely erase. There's a particular quality to the silence in my home now, as if the walls themselves are holding secrets. Sometimes in the deepest hours of night, I find myself looking up at the corners where walls meet ceiling, searching for the glint of a lens that isn't there. And I wonder how many other homes harbor hidden eyes, how many other people move through their private spaces, blissfully unaware of being silently observed, their intimate moments collected and categorized by strangers they may have once trusted enough to let into their homes. The light switch in the hallway continues to function perfectly, but I never touch it without remembering what I found inside, a small black rectangle that revealed a darkness lurking behind the walls of ordinary life. Story 8. I've been a detective for 23 years, but some cases still manage to get under my skin in ways I can't explain. The Blackwood House investigation was one of those cases, the kind that seems straightforward at first, until you realize you've stepped into something that defies conventional explanation. The house itself was unremarkable, a two-story colonial on Maple Street with faded yellow paint and white trim that had seen better days. Built in the 1940s, it had changed hands several times before the Weaver family purchased it in 2018. Emily Weaver, a single mother with no previous criminal record, called us on a Tuesday morning in late October. Her voice on the recorded 911 call was eerily calm, almost detached. "There's something wrong with my house," she said. "I need someone to see this." I remember the way the floorboards creaked beneath my shoes as I followed her through the front door. The air inside felt several degrees cooler than outside, though that could have been my imagination. The house smelled of cinnamon and furniture polish, ordinary scents that somehow felt like a thin veneer over something less pleasant. Emily led me to the main hallway where an old-fashioned chalkboard hung on the wall. It was the kind you'd see in classrooms decades ago, with a wooden frame and a small shelf for chalk and erasers. Written in neat, precise handwriting were the words, "Don't go in the basement." "It started 3 weeks ago," Emily explained, her fingers anxiously twisting a silver ring on her right hand. "I bought this chalkboard at an estate sale to leave notes for my daughter. I use it for grocery lists, reminders, that sort of thing." She paused, staring at the writing. "Every night I erase it completely. Every morning this message reappears." I examined the chalkboard carefully. The writing was done with standard white chalk, the letters formed with a steady hand, nothing particularly menacing about the penmanship itself, but the persistence of the message was unsettling. "Do you have any cameras in the house?" I asked, running my finger along the frame of the chalkboard, feeling for any hidden mechanisms. "I installed one after the 3rd day," she replied, pointed right at the board. "The footage shows nothing. The writing simply appears between frames at exactly 3:17 a.m. every night." I asked to see the basement, of course. Emily hesitated, her face paling slightly before she nodded and led me to a door off the kitchen. The basement steps were steep and narrow, the wooden treads worn smooth from years of use. A single pull string bulb illuminated the space, a concrete floor, stone foundation walls, and the usual collection of storage boxes and old furniture. "I've searched down here multiple times," Emily said, her voice echoing slightly in the empty space. "I never found anything unusual. But something made me want to look more carefully. I asked Emily to wait upstairs while I examined the basement thoroughly. The foundation seemed solid, though in one corner I noticed the concrete floor had a slightly different coloration, a patch about 4 feet square that might have been repaired at some point. Near this patch, tucked behind an old bookshelf, I found something that made my skin crawl. A small child's shoe, a red sneaker caked with dried mud. It was old, the fabric faded, but not ancient, perhaps 10 or 15 years old. I photographed it carefully before placing it in an evidence bag. It was what I found inside the shoe that truly disturbed me. Folded tightly and tucked into the toe was a Polaroid photograph. When I carefully unfolded it, I found myself looking at a picture of Emily Weaver standing in front of the very same house. She looked exactly as she did now, same haircut, same features, but the photo was dated May 14, 1997, more than 20 years before she had purchased the house. Emily Weaver was born in 1988. In the photo, she appeared to be in her 30s, just as she was now. When I brought the photo upstairs, Emily's reaction was not what I expected. She didn't express shock or confusion. Instead, a look of quiet resignation crossed her face. "I was afraid of that," she whispered. Over the next several hours, our investigation uncovered troubling details about the house's history. The previous owners, the Blackwood family, had a daughter who disappeared in 1997. She was 7 years old. The case went cold after months of investigation. The parents insisted they had searched the house thoroughly, including the basement, but no trace of the child was ever found. 6 months after their daughter's disappearance, Mr. Blackwood reportedly repaired a section of the basement floor, claiming water damage had caused it to crack. The timing had raised suspicions, but without evidence, no charges were ever filed. As night fell, I found myself sitting at Emily's kitchen table, reviewing the case files on my laptop. The similarities between Emily and Mrs. Blackwood were striking. Both had the same heart-shaped face, the same dark hair, the same slight build. They could have been sisters, perhaps even the same person at different ages. "Tell me about the estate sale where you bought the chalkboard," I said, watching her carefully. Emily's hand trembled slightly as she brought her tea mug to her lips. It was from the Blackwood estate. Mrs. Blackwood died last year, and her son was selling everything. I nodded slowly. "And when did you first feel drawn to this house? When did you decide you needed to buy it?" Her eyes met mine, and for a moment I saw something flicker behind them. Fear, recognition, or perhaps both. "The day I saw the listing," she said softly. "It felt like coming home, like I'd been here before." That night, after setting up additional cameras throughout the house, I stationed myself in the hallway facing the chalkboard. Emily had reluctantly agreed to stay at a hotel. As the old grandfather clock in the living room chimed 3 times, I felt the temperature drop noticeably. The chalkboard, which I had personally erased earlier, remained blank for several long minutes. Then at precisely 3:17, without any visible hand or movement, chalk dust began to form on the surface. Letter by letter, the same message appeared: "Don't go in the basement." The following morning, after a sleepless night, I authorized a full excavation of the basement floor, focusing on the discolored patch. 6 hours later, we found the remains of a small child, buried beneath 3 feet of concrete. Alongside the body was a second red sneaker, matching the one I had discovered earlier. The DNA results came back a week later. The child was positively identified as Jessica Blackwood, missing since 1997. But there was an additional finding that no one on my team could explain. The child's DNA showed a maternal match to Emily Weaver. Emily Weaver disappeared the day after I showed her the Polaroid photograph. The house on Maple Street remains empty. The chalkboard still hangs in the hallway, though the message has changed. Now it reads, "I am coming home." Some cases, I've learned, don't want to be solved. They want to be remembered. And sometimes, time itself seems to bend around the gravity of certain tragedies, creating echoes that reverberate across decades. I drive by the house occasionally, though I never stop. From the corner of my eye, I sometimes think I see a figure standing at the upstairs window, a woman with dark hair watching me. But when I turn to look directly, there's never anyone there. Just the empty windows of an empty house, keeping its secrets for another generation to discover. Story 9, she looked up while pulling into her driveway and saw them, a pair of muddy sneakers perfectly placed on the edge of the roof. Not hers, not her partner's. When she climbed up to investigate, she found footprints in the dirt, leading to the chimney. I remember the first time I heard about the case. It was late October in the small town of Millfield, where autumn leaves gathered in corners and the evening air carried the scent of wood smoke. Detective Sarah Reeves had invited me to review the file, an unusual case that had been troubling the department for weeks. I'm a criminal psychologist, occasionally consulted on cases that defy conventional understanding. This was certainly one of them. "We call it the shoes on the roof case," Sarah said softly, sliding a manila folder across her desk. The overhead light hummed quietly, casting long shadows across the room. Elena Winters, 37, literature professor at the community college, lives alone since her divorce 3 years ago. I opened the folder, feeling the weight of the paper between my fingers. The first photograph showed exactly what the case name suggested: a pair of men's size 11 gray sneakers, caked with dried mud, positioned with deliberate precision on the edge of a sloped roof. They faced outward as if their owner had been sitting there, looking down at the driveway below. "She first noticed them on September 12th, Sarah continued, her voice maintaining that steady, measured cadence that had always made her an excellent interviewer. "Came home from work around 6:15 p.m. Clear day, good visibility. She's certain they weren't there when she left that morning." I turned the page. The next photo showed footprints in what appeared to be soil collected in the rain gutter. They led toward the brick chimney that rose from the center of the roof. What struck me was their deliberateness, not the chaotic pattern of someone stumbling around, but the measured steps of someone who knew exactly where they were going. "Did she check inside the chimney?" I asked, my fingers tracing the path of the footprints in the photograph. "That's where it gets interesting," Sarah replied, leaning forward slightly. The leather of her chair creaked under the shift in weight. She called 911 before attempting to look inside. Officer Dale Peterson responded. When they examined the chimney together, they found this. She reached across and turned to the next page in the file. The photograph showed a small bundle wrapped in black cloth, lodged about 3 feet down the chimney's narrow passage. The bundle had been opened, its contents arranged neatly on what appeared to be an evidence table. 3 Polaroid photographs of Alina's bedroom, taken while she was sleeping, a handwritten note on college-ruled paper, and a single earring. "The note," I said, focusing on the careful, almost architectural handwriting. "What does it say?" "I've counted your breaths for 17 nights. You average 16 per minute when you dream." A familiar heaviness settled in my chest, the weight of recognizing calculated predatory behavior. The methodical nature of the stalking suggested someone with patience, someone who derived pleasure not just from the act itself, but from the meticulous planning. "The earring belonged to a student who went missing 3 months ago," Sarah continued, her voice dropping even lower. "Caitlin Mendez, 22, creative writing major, never found." The connection sent a subtle chill across my skin. I glanced at the Polaroids again, noting how they had been taken from 3 different angles of Alina's room. Whoever had taken them had moved around freely while she slept, confident and unhurried. "Has Alina received any unusual communications? Letters, emails, unexpected gifts?" Sarah shook her head slowly. Nothing she recognized as unusual, but after finding this, she remembered something. She turned to another page in the file. For about 2 weeks before discovering the shoes, she'd been waking up feeling like her things had been moved slightly. A book on her nightstand positioned differently, her hairbrush on the opposite side of the bathroom counter. She dismissed it as forgetfulness. The office had grown quieter, as if the building itself was listening to our conversation. Outside the window, darkness had fully settled, transforming the glass into a mirror that reflected our concentrated expressions. "What about the shoes themselves?" I asked. "Any identification?" "Mass-produced, available at most department stores. Size 11, as I mentioned. The mud is consistent with the soil from Lakeside Park, about a mile from Alina's house." I nodded, considering the location. Lakeside Park bordered the community college campus. It was a popular spot for joggers during the day, but largely deserted after sunset. "Has anyone checked the college connection between Alina and Caitlin?" Alina taught Introduction to American Literature. Caitlin was enrolled in her class the previous semester. According to Alina, she was a promising student, but they had no special relationship. I continued examining the photographs, paying particular attention to the precise placement of the shoes. They weren't discarded or forgotten. They were displayed, positioned for maximum visibility from the driveway. They were meant to be discovered. "After we found the bundle, we had officers search the property thoroughly," Sarah said, turning to a report near the back of the file. "Nothing else unusual was found in the house, but in the backyard, under Alina's bedroom window, we found shallow depressions in the soil, like someone had stood there multiple times for extended periods." The picture became clearer, someone watching, waiting, gradually becoming more bold, first observing from outside, then entering while she slept, and finally leaving deliberate evidence of their presence. It was a troubling escalation pattern. "Where is Alina now?" "Staying with her sister in Burlington. We have a patrol checking the house regularly." I closed the file, feeling the weight of what hadn't yet been said. "You think this is connected to other cases?" It wasn't a question, but Sarah nodded anyway. "There was another missing student last year, different college, 30 miles south, no apparent connection except..." She paused, reaching for another file on her desk. "A pair of shoes was found on the roof of her apartment building 2 weeks before she disappeared." The silence that followed felt heavy with implication. I thought about the calculated nature of these acts, the patience involved, the intimate knowledge of the victim's routines, the deliberate leaving of clues. This wasn't impulsive behavior. It was a performance. "I'd like to see Alina's house," I said finally, "and I want to look at the student records from both colleges. There's a connection we're missing." Sarah agreed, and we arranged to meet the following morning. As I drove home that night, I found myself checking my rearview mirror more frequently than usual. The darkness seemed deeper somehow, the spaces between streetlights longer and more pronounced. 3 days later, we identified a maintenance worker who had access to both campuses. A man with no criminal record, but a history of boundary issues reported by former employers. When we searched his apartment, we found a collection of small items that seemed insignificant individually. A hairband, a pencil with teeth marks, a single glove. But most telling was the shoebox containing Polaroid photographs of sleeping women and carefully labeled audio cassettes with dates spanning back 5 years. The case was solved methodically, just as it had been executed. The man confessed to the stalking, but not to any disappearances. The shoes on the roof, he explained, were his signature, his way of claiming ownership over the spaces and people below. As for Caitlin Mendez and the other missing student, he maintained his innocence with a calm detachment that left me wondering. Sometimes I drive past Alina's house on my way home. She's moved away permanently now, unable to feel safe in a space so thoroughly invaded. The new owners have replaced the roof, unaware of its history. But occasionally, in that moment when day surrenders to evening, I find myself glancing up at the roof line, half expecting to see a pair of muddy shoes positioned with deliberate care, watching and waiting for someone to notice. Because the most disturbing realization from this case wasn't what we found, it was the question of how many roofs we never thought to check, how many shoes have been placed and retrieved without anyone looking up at the right moment to see them. Story 10, Beneath the Surface. The old wooden plank gave way under her weight, shifting imperceptibly but enough to draw her curiosity. Kneeling down, she traced her fingers along the edges, sensing a hidden gap beneath the seemingly solid floor. With gentle precision, she lifted the boards, unveiling a dark, narrow space that lay hidden beneath the house. At first, the darkness revealed nothing but dust and cobwebs. Yet, as her eyes adjusted to the dim light, shapes began to form in the shadows. A mattress, a chair, and tucked away in a corner, a weathered notebook filled with pages upon pages of a single name, her name written repeatedly in a haunting script. Detective Morgan Reed watched silently as Sarah Coleman peered into the abyss beneath her newly acquired home. The fear reflected in Sarah's eyes ran deeper than mere surprise at the discovery of a hidden room. It was a violation of security, an intrusion of malevolence into what should have been a fresh beginning. Leave everything as it is, Detective Reed's voice was steady, commanding. Clicking on her flashlight, she cast light into the concealed space, revealing walls adorned with surveillance photograph snapshots of Sarah going about her daily life, unaware of the prying eyes that had been watching her every move. Sarah had purchased the quaint cottage from the estate of a reclusive man named Walter Green, who had passed away without any known relatives. The property, vacant for months before Sarah's arrival, had been described in the real estate listing as charming and in need of minor touch-ups. No mention had been made of the hidden secrets lurking within. "I never met him, the previous owner," Sarah's voice wavered. "The neighbors said he kept to himself. I was told the basement access had been sealed off long ago. That's what the inspection report indicated." Crime scene investigators arrived, their tools clattering against the wooden floors as they entered the hidden chamber. They meticulously documented every detail, collecting evidence and eventually retrieving the mattress, chair, and notebook. Forensic analysis unveiled a myriad of fingerprints throughout the space, all belonging to Walter Green. What troubled the investigators most was the timeline they constructed. Utility records and dated photographs in the hidden chamber revealed that Walter had been observing Sarah for at least 3 years before his demise. He had shadowed her at community events, followed her to the grocery store, and frequented the cafe where she occasionally worked. Yet Sarah had no memory of ever crossing paths with him. This level of fixation often escalates, the department psychologist remarked during a debriefing. The subject transitions from fantasy to strategic planning. The hidden room suggests he was preparing for something more direct. Detective Reed's inquiry took an unexpected turn during an interview with Walter's former colleague from the local shopping center maintenance department. The man appeared uneasy, twisting his wedding band as they spoke. Walter mentioned her sometimes, he confessed. Said she reminded him of someone. "I thought it was just the ramblings of an old man with a crush. I never imagined." His voice trailed off, his gaze fixed on his hands. "Did he discuss any intentions involving her?" Reed probed. "Not explicitly, but he had this phrase he'd repeat, something about how she belongs with me. I assumed it was all talk." Reed obtained a warrant to search Walter's workplace locker, untouched since his passing. Inside, they discovered a key that didn't correspond to any of Walter's locks at home. Tracing the serial number led them to a storage unit registered in his name. As the metal door of the unit screeched open, a chilling sight unfolded. Neatly arranged within were replicas of Sarah's former apartment, furnishings her bed, desk, and even her living room setup. Walter had painstakingly recreated her living space down to the smallest details. A mannequin with a wig mirroring Sarah's hairstyle sat at the replica desk. The most unsettling find was a calendar marked with a date just 1 week after Walter's sudden demise from a heart attack. The date was encircled in red with a single word emblazoned across it: together. Further investigation revealed that Walter had been institutionalized in his youth due to an infatuation with a female teacher. His records documented treatment for erotomania, a delusion where the subject believes another individual is in love with them despite evidence to the contrary. After his release, Walter had lived uneventfully for decades until something about Sarah reignited his former fixations. At the police station, Reed spread out crime scene photos on the conference table. In his mind, he believed they shared a special bond. To him, they were destined to be united. Could she have encountered him somewhere, triggered this fixation unknowingly? Another detective inquired. Reed shook her head. There's no evidence of any prior interaction. Sometimes these obsessions require only a small spark, a fleeting smile, a prolonged glance. For someone with his history, that could have been enough. Unable to feel secure in the house any longer, Sarah made the decision to sell. During the final walkthrough with her realtor, she stood in the living room, her arms wrapped around herself. "I can't stop thinking about what might have happened if he hadn't passed away when he did," she murmured softly. "If I hadn't noticed that loose floorboard, how long would I have resided here, unaware of his watchful eyes, unaware of the hidden truth beneath my very feet?" Following Walter's demise, the case was officially closed, classified as stalking with intent to abduct, though the abduction itself never transpired. Psychological evaluations of the evidence indicated that Walter had schemed to confine Sarah either in the hidden room or the storage unit. Sarah relocated far away, altering her routines and adopting a greater sense of vigilance regarding her personal information. Detective Reed occasionally checked in on her, a silent acknowledgement of how narrowly Sarah had escaped becoming another tragic statistic, another casualty. The cottage found new owners in a young couple oblivious to its dark past. The concealed chamber was sealed off, the floorboards replaced. Life resumed its course. Yet for those privy to the truth, the tale of the hidden room beneath the floor served as a haunting reminder of the unseen dangers that lurk, of monsters who evade capture, and of victims who remain unaware of the peril that once loomed so close to their lives. Story 11: The Nursery's Whispers. She longed to transform the nursery, a sanctuary for the little one on the way. The walls wore a faded blue, a hue soaked in stories of the past. As she brushed on the first coat of fresh white paint, a hidden secret emerged from beneath a message, faint at first, then gaining clarity. "Don't let it hear you." Her heart skipped a beat. Stepping back, she noticed something chilling, tiny handprints imprinted in the wet paint, too high for any child's reach. The revelation within the nursery of the Morgan house marked the genesis of what would later be dubbed the Whispering House case. The young couple had bought the vintage home at an unbelievably low price, unaware of the dark history that lay within its walls. Detective Sarah Klein arrived at the doorstep, her notebook ready. A pregnant woman, adorned in paint-stained overalls, opened the door, fatigue evident in her eyes. Tremors shook her hands as she recounted the eerie discovery of the hidden message and handprints. The previous owners vanished overnight, the woman revealed. Neighbors claimed they left hastily, packing only essentials into their car. Detective Klein ventured through the aged abode, the floors creaking beneath her weight. In the nursery, she inspected the half-painted wall, the cryptic message still visible amidst the abandoned paint job. Beside it, 5 child-sized handprints adorned the wall, positioned at an adult's height. Back at the precinct, Detective Klein delved into the property's records. The house had changed owners 8 times in 30 years, an unusually high turnover rate. Disturbingly, child welfare reports were linked to 3 of those families, with children mentioning whispers and unseen presences. Further investigation unveiled the house's past connection to Alina Blackwood, a widow who once ran an orphanage on the premises, where 5 children mysteriously disappeared. Interviews with former residents unveiled a pattern of unsettling events, rearranged toys, phantom laughter, and mysterious writings on the walls. The handwriting matched that of Alina Blackwood's journals, hinting at a sinister presence lingering within the home. The detective's persistence led to a chilling discovery beneath the basement floor: 5 child-sized shapes detected by ground-penetrating radar. Breaking through the concrete revealed the grim truth: 5 sets of remains, confirming the tragic fate of the missing orphans. Luminol revealed a haunting sight in the nursery: countless handprints glowing eerily on the walls, unseen to the naked eye. Alina's journals exposed her macabre intentions, believing in the energy of orphaned children to prolong her own life. The case concluded with a proper burial for the victims, their names etched as murder victims instead of runaways. Despite justice being served, an inexplicable aura lingered in the house, reaching out through time and paint layers. The nursery walls were demolished, yet workers reported hearing children's whispers from the debris, refusing to return after their shifts. The house was condemned, a cold case left unsolved, leaving behind spiritual questions that echoed through the empty rooms. Detective Klein preserved a photograph from the case, a haunting image of 5 luminous handprints in the dark, a reminder that some secrets etch themselves into the very essence of a place, beyond the reach of fresh paint and passing years. Story 12: The old library faced its fate, marked for demolition by the hands of progress. The workers toiled tirelessly, nearing the end of their task when a serendipitous stumble revealed a hidden secret. A latch, concealed within the confines of a dusty bookshelf, yielded to a gentle touch, unveiling a passage leading to a forgotten chamber. The air hung heavy, untouched by human presence for decades. Within the dimly lit room stood a solitary chair, anchored to the floor, its purpose shrouded in mystery. Etched repeatedly on the walls, a haunting message echoed in the silence: "I am still here." The construction foreman, taken aback by the unexpected discovery, swiftly contacted the authorities. What started as a routine job swiftly spiraled into the realm of the unnerving. Detective Morgan Walsh, a seasoned investigator with decades of experience, found himself facing a scene unlike any other in his career. Standing at the threshold, his flashlight pierced the darkness, illuminating the eerie proclamation etched into the walls. "Secure the area," Walsh commanded, his voice resounding in the confined space. "No one disturbs a thing until forensics arrives." The history of the building whispered tales of intrigue. Once owned by the prominent Harrington family, the library had been bequeathed to the public following the enigmatic disappearance of their daughter, Rebecca. Vanishing during her college years, leaving behind only an abandoned car near the woods, Rebecca's fate had remained a mystery. Despite exhaustive searches and fruitless interviews, the truth eluded all but her grieving family. Their steadfast belief in a darker truth lingered like a shadow over the years. As forensic experts meticulously combed through the hidden chamber, traces of hair, fibers, and unsettling remnants emerged. The chair bore witness to silent struggles, its worn leather straps a grim testament to unseen torment. The walls, marred by scratches and whispers of blood, hinted at a harrowing tale long suppressed. Walsh, fueled by a growing sense of unease, delved into the Harrington family's past. The timing of the library's donation after Rebecca's disappearance tugged at his instincts, hinting at a connection waiting to be unearthed. Further digging unearthed a troubling detail: the very bookshelf concealing the hidden room had been installed by a contractor closely tied to Maxwell Harrington, Rebecca's uncle, and a figure of influence within the family. Financial records painted a picture of excessive payments, far beyond normal renovation costs, leading to a web of suspicion. Interviews with former staff unveiled shocking revelations. Maxwell's peculiar insistence on preserving the untouched section of the library raised eyebrows, with one elderly librarian recalling his solitary vigils within those walls long after closing hours. The pieces of the puzzle began to align, painting a grim portrait of familial secrets and betrayal. The breakthrough came with the confirmation that DNA recovered from the hidden room matched samples from Rebecca's belongings. The chilling truth emerged: Rebecca had not fled, but had been held captive by her own blood. Armed with a warrant, detectives descended upon the Harrington estate, where a damning journal, hidden within Maxwell's study, laid bare the extent of his obsession and guilt. Confronted with irrefutable evidence, Maxwell's veneer of denial crumbled. His words, devoid of remorse, unveiled a tale of greed and desperation. Rebecca's demise, a tragic consequence of his need to safeguard his ill-gotten gains, painted a portrait of familial betrayal at its darkest. The excavation beneath the hidden chamber unearthed long-buried remains, confirming Rebecca's tragic fate. The courtroom, heavy with grief and pent-up anguish, bore witness to Maxwell's reckoning. Rebecca's parents clung to her recovered bracelet, a bittersweet memento of a life stolen too soon. The library, once slated for destruction, now stood as a somber monument to a life lost and justice belatedly served. In a final act of poetic justice, Rebecca's haunting message, etched into the walls of her prison, ensured her legacy endured. "I am still here," a whispered plea for remembrance, echoed in the hearts of those who sought truth and closure. And so, behind the veil of dust and neglect, a story of betrayal and resilience unfolded, reminding all who passed through of the price of silence and the enduring power of the truth. Story 13. Once upon a time, whispers of a mysterious house at the edge of the woods floated through the town, a tale shared only in hushed tones. This house, shrouded in secrets, stood alone amidst the trees, its windows dark, its porch weighed down by the burden of time. No one laid claim to its ownership, and the origins of its construction faded into obscurity. It was a group of hikers who first stumbled upon the enigmatic dwelling, drawn in by an inexplicable force. As they drew closer, their eyes fell upon a chilling sight. The wooden siding of the house bore names, deeply carved as if to serve as ominous markers. And at the very bottom of the list, fresh and untouched by the passage of time, was a name that sent shivers down their spines, a name none of them recognized. Until one among them, with a voice filled with trepidation, uttered, "That name, it's mine." Under the cover of night, a call came into dispatch, a mere trespassing report on the surface. The voice on the other end belonged to Mason Wright, the leader of the hiking expedition who had made the unsettling discovery of his own name etched into the abandoned house. Responding officers anticipated a routine case of mischief, perhaps the handiwork of wayward youths, but what awaited them defied all logic and reason. As darkness descended upon the forest, Detective Sarah Keller arrived on the scene, her flashlight piercing the shadows to reveal the weathered facade of the structure. The names, 27 in total, cascaded down the eastern wall, some faded with age, others sharp and fresh as if carved just moments ago. And there at the very bottom, Mason Wright, the incision still redolent of sawdust. "I've never set foot here before," Mason insisted, his breath forming ephemeral clouds in the frigid air. "How could anyone know my name?" Thus began the investigation, delving into the backgrounds of each name on the haunting list. What they unearthed sent chills down their spines. Each name belonged to a soul reported missing over the span of 4 decades, a chilling pattern linking them all. Forensic analysts meticulously documented the carvings, noting the nuances in depth, technique, and weathering. The oldest name, that of Rebecca Hansen, harked back to a decades-old missing persons case, a young woman who had vanished without a trace during a solitary hike in the very woods where the house stood sentinel. Detective Keller probed Mason's story, searching for any thread connecting him to the spectral gallery of names. His account remained steadfast. He was a stranger to this place, his presence here a mere twist of fate during a casual hike with friends. The focus of the inquiry shifted to his companions, and it was in the photographs captured by Emily Chen, the group's photographer, that a disquieting presence emerged, a spectral figure lurking in the background, always just out of focus. With a warrant in hand, the officers ventured into the abandoned house's interior, a realm frozen in time, every surface cloaked in dust, every piece of furniture a relic of the past. But it was in the basement that the true horror awaited them, an arrangement of personal effects belonging to the missing hikers, meticulously displayed on shelves, each item bearing a name from the list outside. The evidence spoke of a macabre obsession, a chilling collection of memories preserved in the darkness. And as the search intensified, whispers of unseen forces began to plague Mason, his reality unraveling in a web of paranoia and dread. The revelation of the house's former owner, the reclusive hunter Victor Blackwood, cast a long shadow over the investigation, a man who had vanished into thin air, leaving behind a legacy of fear. A meticulous search of the surrounding forest unearthed a trove of secrets, a hidden network of hunting blinds, a journal teeming with sinister entries detailing the stalking of unsuspecting hikers. The manhunt for Blackwood spanned jurisdictions, with no stone left unturned in the pursuit of justice. But as the night stretched on, Mason's presence dwindled, his fate entwined with the shadows that lurked in the forest. And then a breakthrough, a hidden chamber within the house revealed a grim tableau, a workshop of horrors where a new name had been carved, awaiting its fateful unveiling. The name belonged to the lead forensic technician, who had vanished without a trace, a chilling echo of those who had gone before him. A veil of surveillance descended upon the house, a silent vigil against the encroaching darkness. And on a fateful night, as the sensors blazed to life, a spectral figure emerged from the forest, a wraith-like presence defying all reason. The trap was set, the net closing in, only to find emptiness where the figure had stood moments before. To this day, the house stands sentinel, a grim reminder of the mysteries that dwell within the woods. Mason Wright and the forensic technician vanished without a trace, their fates intertwined with the nameless souls who came before them. The investigation rages on, a relentless pursuit of answers in the face of unspeakable horrors. And in the quiet of the night, the names on the wall whisper their grim tale, a story of darkness and the unknown that lingers in the shadows, waiting to claim its next victim. Story 14. In the quiet solitude of her bathroom, she wiped away the mist on the mirror, expecting to see her familiar reflection staring back at her. But on this particular day, something felt amiss. Her face appeared unchanged, her attire just as she remembered. Yet a subtle unease crept in as she gazed longer at her own image. A flicker caught the corner of her eye, a movement not of her own making. And as she turned away, the reflection remained fixed, unwavering, watching her every move with an unsettling intensity. Thus began the enigmatic saga of Rebecca Thorne, a woman whose life took a bewildering turn from that singular moment in her modest apartment in a serene suburban enclave. Known to her acquaintances as a meticulous and reserved individual who preferred solitude yet maintained a polite demeanor with those around her, Rebecca's existence revolved around the structured world of data analysis for a medium-sized corporation. Her days were governed by routines and precision, offering no hint that she would soon become enmeshed in one of the most mystifying criminal puzzles of the era. The initial signs were subtle. Objects in Rebecca's home seemed to shift inexplicably: a coffee mug relocated, books rearranged, her toothbrush out of place. These occurrences, at first dismissed as mere lapses in memory from long hours spent immersed in work, gradually escalated. Weeks turned into a montage of disturbances until Rebecca, at last, sought the aid of law enforcement. When Detective Marion Shaw received the initial report, the consensus leaned towards a mental health concern rather than criminal intent. There were no signs of forced entry, no missing items, just a pervasive feeling of wrongness that pervaded Rebecca's living space. However, everything changed with the chilling incident involving the bathroom mirror. During her subsequent interactions with the authorities, Rebecca recounted in vivid detail the eerie episode where her reflection appeared to move independently, casting a shadow of surveillance over her solitude. Crucially, she had evidence to substantiate her claims: a security camera trained on her front door. The footage captured a disturbing reality: a figure identical to Rebecca entering her dwelling with a key, while she was already verified at her workplace miles away. The revelation of this doppelganger phenomenon sent shivers down the spines of even the most seasoned investigators. The enigmatic imposter mimicked Rebecca's every nuance with uncanny precision, leaving behind a trail of perplexity and dread in its wake. As forensic scrutiny yielded no foreign DNA and neighbors reported nothing amiss, the puzzle deepened. Rebecca, confronted with a mounting sense of disorientation, meticulously documented each disturbance. The subtle alterations in her abode multiplied: vanishing edibles, inexplicable internet searches, and unsettling selfies on her phone that she had no memory of capturing. A sense of creeping unease gripped her as she confided in Detective Shaw about the disconcerting possibility that someone was orchestrating her descent into a surreal nightmare. The breakthrough arrived with the realization that the doppelganger's intrusions coincided with Rebecca's scheduled absences for routine commitments. This targeted surveillance hinted at an obsession with assuming Rebecca's identity. As the investigation delved deeper, a former colleague, Lily Winters, emerged as a person of interest. Dismissed for erratic behavior, Lily's fixation on Rebecca bordered on an unsettling obsession. A search of Lily's residence unearthed a chilling tableau: a meticulously recreated replica of Rebecca's life, from wardrobe duplicates to mimicry of mannerisms captured in eerie detail. The extent of Lily's premeditated infiltration sent shockwaves through law enforcement, leading to a realization that her intentions extended beyond imitation. As authorities closed in on Lily, she evaded capture, leaving behind a void that only deepened the enigma. Rebecca, now living under protective custody, found herself entangled in a web of deceit where her very identity hung in the balance. Lily's audacious usurpation of her life signaled a sinister twist in an already baffling narrative. The saga remains unresolved, with Rebecca forging a new existence in seclusion, forever haunted by the specter of a woman who sought to obliterate her essence. Detective Shaw, bearing witness to the dual faces of the uncanny resemblance, ponders the depths of identity and the chilling realization that one's very being can be coveted to the point of annihilation. In the quiet of her office, she gazes at the photograph of two women, mirror images of each other yet worlds apart. The tale of Rebecca Thorne and Lily Winters lingers as a cautionary whisper in the corridors of law enforcement, a reminder that the boundaries of identity are fragile and that within the shadows of imitation lies a darkness that threatens to engulf the very essence of self. Story 15. The aged apartment was full of peculiarities, pipes that groaned, floorboards that sang tales of their own, but the new tenant sensed something different in the whispers of the walls. The footsteps she heard were too precise, too deliberate for the usual settling sounds. They echoed from above, slow and measured, despite her living on the highest floor. One night, fueled by a surge of bravery, she rapped on the ceiling with a broomstick. The noises ceased. A hush enveloped the room. Then a solitary knock reverberated back from somewhere inside the ceiling. Sarah Coleman chose to keep the knocking incident to herself, convincing her mind it was merely the building's bones shifting or perhaps a critter seeking refuge in the attic space. Even as the footsteps persisted night after night, she adapted, cranking up the volume of her television, donning headphones to bed, anything to drown out the methodical footfalls that painted invisible paths across her ceiling in the shroud of darkness. Detective Morris caught wind of the apartment through a maintenance worker who stumbled upon a concealed crawl space during routine repairs. The worker had peeled back a layer of drywall in the hallway outside Sarah's residence to mend a water leak. Behind it, he unearthed a narrow passage that defied the building blueprints. His flashlight pierced the darkness, revealing a makeshift living quarters, discarded wrappers, empty bottles, a soiled blanket, and a weathered notebook. The building superintendent dialed the police without delay. Detective Morris, accompanied by his partner Detective Rivera, arrived to find the maintenance worker pallid and trembling. "Someone's been dwelling in the walls," he repeated in a tremulous voice. "Someone's been watching." The notebook held meticulous observations of Sarah Coleman, her routines, her guests, her supper choices, her TV preferences, her bathing times, her sleep patterns. The handwriting, at first precise, veered into chaos towards the final pages, interspersed with cryptic symbols in the margins. "The subject no longer responds to my cues," the concluding entry read. "She has chosen to disregard me. No one disregards me." Forensic teams combed the crawl space, unearthing fingerprints that eluded any match in existing databases. They uncovered a labyrinth of passages woven into the walls and ceilings of the building, some dating back decades as per structural assessments. The passageways linked to 5 different apartments, but culminated in viewing points, tiny apertures camouflaged as fixtures or minor blemishes in only one, Sarah Coleman's. The investigative team interviewed current occupants who reported nothing amiss beyond the usual symphony of apartment life. Former residents painted a disparate picture. 3 prior tenants of Sarah's abode spoke of a sensation of being surveilled or hearing inexplicable movements. 1 tenant had hastily vacated after a mere fortnight. None had voiced their encounters, fearing they'd be dismissed as paranoid. A breakthrough surfaced when forensics unearthed minute blood spatters in one of the crawl spaces. DNA testing linked them to Martin Weaver, a former resident who had vanished without a trace 4 years earlier. His kin had filed a missing person report, but the trail had gone cold. Martin had occupied the apartment directly beneath Sarah's. Detective Morris revisited Martin's disappearance. According to neighbors, Martin had grumbled about noises emanating from above his apartment. He had confronted the inhabitant residing above him at that time, a reserved man named Edward who kept to himself. Soon after, Martin evaporated into thin air. Edward disappeared the following month, leaving no forwarding address. Investigators delved into Edward's rental history and unearthed a pattern. He had inhabited 6 different apartment complexes over 2 decades. In each instance, he had requisitioned top-floor units, forged minimal social ties, and ultimately vanished without a trace. A neighbor from his 3rd residence recalled him as intense, citing his frequent complaints about requiring silence. The investigators stumbled upon property records disclosing that Edward had procured remote rural land. Upon reaching the site, they stumbled upon a cabin adorned with photographs and notes, snapshots of denizens from various apartment complexes, including Sarah Coleman and Martin Weaver, schematics of ventilation systems and weak structural points, elaborate journals detailing specimen observations and habitat maintenance. In the heart of the cabin stood a corkboard adorned with newspaper clippings, missing persons bulletins, 6 of them, all former residents of buildings where Edward had resided. Deep gouges marred the wooden floor beneath the board, hinting at a heavy object being dragged repetitively. Behind the cabin, cadaver dogs led the investigators to a freshly disturbed patch of soil. Excavation unveiled human remains, and then another burial ground, and another. As forensic anthropologists commenced the mournful task of identifying the victims, Detective Morris returned to Sarah's apartment building. Though the crawl spaces had been sealed, tenants sporadically reported peculiar noises. During the installation of new security systems, maintenance workers stumbled upon an item nestled in a corner where the ceiling met the wall in the hallway, a slender notebook, fresher than its predecessor. The initial page bore a solitary line, "They found my old nest, but not my new one." The script mirrored that of the prior notebook. The final page housed a rudimentary sketch of Sarah's apartment layout with a crimson-marked new passage, and a date for that very night. Officers raced to evacuate Sarah, only to discover her apartment vacant. Her phone perched on the kitchen counter, her TV droned on, her shower gushed with water. In the bathroom, as mist evaporated from the mirror, a message etched by a finger materialized. "Look up." The ceiling panel above the shower had been pried open. The hunt for Edward persists. Investigators have identified him as Edward Mercer, a former construction specialist renowned for renovations. His comprehension of building frameworks allowed him to craft his clandestine web of observation points and passages. Thermal imaging scans of Sarah's edifice unveiled no signs of current occupancy within the walls. Sarah Coleman remains unaccounted for. Her case intertwines with similar vanishings across multiple states. Authorities have issued alerts to apartment complex managers concerning unauthorized alterations in concealed spaces. Yet what haunts Detective Morris most isn't the graves or the diaries or even the snapshots of oblivious residents. It's the mental image of Sarah, night after night, perceiving those footsteps above her in an apartment devoid of an upper-floor resident, the footsteps that ceased when she rapped and then echoed back. On solitary nights in the sanctum of his abode, Detective Morris finds himself gazing upward at his ceiling, listening, waiting, and pondering who else might be listening as well. Story 16, The Unseen Doll. In the hushed corners of an attic, tucked away beneath a worn blanket, a forgotten treasure lay hidden. It was a porcelain doll, its delicate features bearing the weight of time, with blue eyes that seemed to hold secrets beyond their painted gaze. Sarah and Michael, a young couple who stumbled upon this curious find, brushed it off as just another relic of the past, a mere trinket of forgotten days. Yet as night descended upon their home, a subtle shift in the air whispered of something amiss. The silence that enveloped them stretched, a heavy veil that draped over their slumbering forms. and when morning light filtered through their windows, the doll was no longer confined to the attic's shadows. It sat, a silent sentinel, at the foot of their bed. Sarah and Michael had been captivated by the allure of a Victorian house, its intricate woodwork weaving tales of bygone eras, its whispers of mystery luring them into its embrace. Unbeknownst to them, their purchase would entwine their fates with the enigmatic history that clung to the walls like tendrils of mist. Detective Rachel Winters, a beacon of logic in a sea of shadows, received the call on a crisp autumn morning. The scene she encountered was a tableau of unnerving precision. A female victim, her limbs contorted in an unnatural pose, eyes wide with terror. A male victim, frozen in a desperate attempt to flee the unseen horror that had descended upon them. As Detective Winters delved into the labyrinthine investigation, a tapestry of eerie accounts emerged from the neighbors, a flicker of movement behind a darkened window, the echo of spectral laughter dancing through the night. Each whispered tale added a layer of unease to the tapestry of fear that gripped the community. The forensic team, meticulous in their pursuit of truth, uncovered traces of a spectral presence, fine threads of vintage fabrics, remnants of a bygone era, woven into the very fabric of the house. Yet amidst the tangible clues, there lingered an unsettling absence: no fingerprints, no DNA, no trace of a physical intruder. As the shadows of the past unfurled, a pattern emerged, a lineage of tragedy, a legacy of inexplicable demise that spanned generations. The specter of a doll maker, his creations veiled in whispers of the arcane, cast a haunting shadow over the investigation. In the depths of the attic, hidden truths awaited, a cache of photographs unveiling a chilling revelation. The doll, a harbinger of unseen forces, bore a striking resemblance to a creation of the doll maker, its presence a spectral echo of a past long forgotten. A distant relative of the doll maker whispered of forbidden rituals, of spirits bound to objects, of a dark alchemy that breathed life into the lifeless. The tendrils of the unknown coiled around the investigation, drawing Detective Winters into a web of half-truths and whispers of the beyond. And then, as swiftly as a wisp of smoke vanishes in the night, the answers slipped through her grasp. No suspects emerged, no conventional theories could contain the enigma that gripped the house in its spectral embrace. The doll, a silent witness to the unfolding tragedy, vanished into the night, leaving only a void in its wake. Detective Winters, a lone sentinel in a sea of shadows, retired into the quiet folds of obscurity, carrying with her a photograph that bore witness to the unseen forces that lingered within the walls of the house. The new owners, unaware of the specter that once haunted the attic, chose to leave its secrets undisturbed. Yet on nights cloaked in silence, whispers would drift through the neighborhood, a fleeting shadow dancing behind the attic window, the echo of a child's laughter mingling with the stillness of the night. And so the doll slipped into the realm of myth and legend, a phantom of the past that whispered its secrets to those who dared to listen. In the tapestry of unsolved mysteries, its presence lingered, a specter of the unknown that danced on the edge of perception, a reminder of the unseen forces that dwell in the shadows of the world. Story 17. The old Polaroid held secrets within its faded frame, a forgotten birthday frozen in time. Faces smiled, candles flickered, a scene of joy captured decades ago. But when the daughter inherited the box of memories, she uncovered something unsettling. A figure lingered in the background of each photo, a man obscured by shadows, standing just beyond the glow of celebration. He didn't belong to the family, yet he appeared in every snapshot, drawing closer with each passing image. Sarah Winters stumbled upon the collection while clearing out her mother's attic after the funeral. A simple cardboard box labeled Memories revealed a trove of moments from her childhood, now tainted by an eerie presence. The first photo showed a faint silhouette at the edge, barely noticeable during her 7th birthday party. In the next, the figure had moved inside, and by the third, he stood ominously behind her uncle. No one in the photos seemed aware of his silent intrusion. With trembling hands, Sarah called her father, seeking answers to the mystery that unfolded before her. "Dad, who is this man in the background of these pictures?" A heavy silence filled the line before a sharp intake of breath. "What man? There shouldn't be anyone but family," her father finally replied. Digital copies of the Polaroids were sent, prompting a shaken response from her father. "We would have noticed a stranger," he insisted, disbelief coloring his voice. Detective Marcus Reed listened attentively as Sarah laid out the unsettling evidence before him. Rain tapped against the windows of the precinct, casting a somber ambience over the room. The detective's experienced gaze scanned each photo, his fingers tracing the progression of the mysterious figure. "No one recognized this individual?" he inquired, his voice neutral yet intrigued. Sarah confirmed his question, arranging the photos in sequence to reveal the chilling advancement of the unknown man through the family gatherings. As the detective studied the images, a realization dawned upon him. The figure's deliberate movement through the photos, inching closer to the children with each frame, painted a sinister narrative. In the final snapshot, he loomed directly behind Sarah's childhood self, a pale hand outstretched just beyond the frame. Reed suggested the photographer's involvement, but doubt lingered in his tone. Sarah clarified that her mother had operated the camera, ruling out external interference. The investigation delved deeper as Reed initiated contact with surviving attendees of the party, only to find no recollection of the mysterious man. No hired servers, no visiting neighbors, just a secluded property chosen for privacy. Facial recognition software failed to unveil the man's identity, his presence strategically obscured in every photo. However, a sense of practiced intent lingered in his posture, hinting at a hidden agenda. The discovery of more incriminating photos in other family albums propelled the investigation forward. Different occasions, different years, yet the figure remained a constant, lurking unnoticed in the background. Enhanced by a computer specialist, the images revealed crucial details. A scar, a ring, a partial reflection unveiling hidden facial features. A breakthrough came with a match of dental records to Robert Keller, a maintenance worker linked to cold cases of child abductions in the region. Keller's connection to the rental property where Sarah's birthday occurred raised chilling possibilities. Master keys to various properties, vanished children, and a trail of unsolved mysteries intertwined with his shadowy presence in the family photos. Excavations at Keller's former residence unearthed haunting relics: a hair clip, a toy car, a bracelet, all tying back to the missing children. The pieces of a macabre puzzle fell into place, revealing a dark past hidden beneath the facade of celebration. Alone in her apartment, Sarah pondered the revelations that had shattered the illusions of her past. The detective's call confirming the identification of remains near the vacation property echoed in her mind, bringing closure tinged with sorrow. DNA had matched one of the missing children, offering a bittersweet resolution to a decades-old tragedy. The final birthday photo held a haunting presence, the figure's watchful gaze frozen in time behind her younger self, a silent witness to unspeakable horrors. The shadow in the family photos had transitioned from obscurity to infamy, his malevolent presence finally acknowledged after years of anonymity. Sarah carefully placed the photos back in the box, now transformed into evidence of a nightmare long concealed. The unseen threat captured in the frames served as a sobering reminder that danger could lurk within the mundane, moving undetected through celebrations, leaving behind only faint traces in the tapestry of memory. Story 18. In the stillness of the night, a vacant house stood as a silent sentinel, its secrets shrouded in shadows. Whispers among the neighbors spoke of a young woman who had vanished, leaving behind a haunting absence that lingered in the air. Years passed, and the house remained untouched until new tenants dared to breach its walls. As they stepped inside, a sense of foreboding washed over them. The bedroom, sealed off from the world, held a mystery waiting to be unraveled. With a creak and a crack, the door swung open, revealing a scene frozen in time. The air was thick with the weight of years, dust dancing in the dim light like forgotten memories. The bed, neatly made, seemed untouched by the passage of time. A mirror gleamed, reflecting a room devoid of life. And there on the desk, a solitary candle stood as a sentinel of the past, its flame long extinguished, leaving behind trails of wax like silent tears on the wooden surface. But what drew their gaze was the notebook, its pages whispering of a story untold. Detective Morgan, a seeker of truths, pored over the words written by a lost soul. Elise Winters, her name a whisper in the wind, had etched her fears and hopes onto the blank canvas of the pages. In the stillness of that room, a tale unfolded. Elise, a paralegal ensnared in a web of deceit, had uncovered dark secrets that threatened to consume her. Her meticulous handwriting spoke of shadows lurking in the corners, of a truth too dangerous to be revealed. The detective, guided by the ghostly script, unearthed a conspiracy that spanned the corridors of power. Elise's voice echoed through hidden recordings, exposing a web of lies woven by those who profited from the suffering of others. As the pieces fell into place, a chilling realization dawned. Elise's disappearance was not a mere vanishing act, it was a sacrifice made in the name of justice. Her room, a shrine to her bravery, held the key to unlocking the truth that had eluded so many. The room whispered of betrayal and greed, of a young woman silenced by those who feared her courage. And as the detective delved deeper, a shadow emerged from the darkness, a figure cloaked in deceit, a puppet master of lives. Vincent Harriman, a man of influence and malice, stood at the heart of the storm. His hands stained with blood and corruption, his soul a barren wasteland of remorse. But justice, like a silent specter, crept closer with each passing moment. In the end, the room bore witness to the reckoning. Harriman's facade crumbled, his lies laid bare for all to see. The truth, a beacon in the night, guided the lost souls to a place of reckoning. And as the house lay empty once more, a sense of closure descended upon its walls. The echoes of Elise's voice lingered in the air, a reminder of a life cut short but not forgotten. In the darkness of that room, justice found its voice, and though the house remained a silent sentinel, its secrets whispered on the wind, a tale of courage and sacrifice etched into its very walls. Story 19. In the hushed stillness of the night, a pocket dial echoed through the empty corridors of time, a mere whisper of static and muffled sounds that could easily fade into the darkness. But the operator, attuned to the subtle shifts of the unknown, sensed a presence lingering within that accidental call. And then a voice, soft yet urgent, broke through the veil of silence. A woman's voice, trembling with fear, uttered only 2 words before vanishing into the void. He's here. The call originated from an old, forgotten number linked to an abandoned house, a relic of the past left to decay in solitude. Detective Morgan Reed, drawn to the mystery like a moth to a flickering flame, found herself captivated by the enigma that unfolded before her. The house, once a sanctuary for the Sullivan family, now stood as a silent witness to secrets buried deep within its walls. As Morgan delved deeper into the tangled web of the past, she uncovered a chilling truth that defied logic and reason. The phone, resting innocently on the dusty kitchen counter, held within its digital memory a connection to a world long gone. A world where the living and the dead danced on the edge of reality, their voices intertwined in a haunting symphony of whispers and echoes. The spectral whispers of the past guided Morgan through the shadows of uncertainty, leading her to a revelation that sent shivers down her spine. The number belonged to Catherine Sullivan, a woman who had perished in a tragic accident years ago. Yet here she was, her voice echoing across the abyss of time, pleading for help that could never come. As the investigation unfolded, the veil of illusion began to lift, revealing a sinister truth lurking beneath the surface. The journal, a silent witness to Catherine's harrowing ordeal, detailed a story of love twisted into obsession, of trust shattered by betrayal. Mark Jennings, a figure from Catherine's past, emerged as a specter of darkness, his hands stained with the blood of innocence. In a chilling twist of fate, the buried secrets of the past rose to the surface, unveiling a malevolent force that had hidden in plain sight. Mark's facade crumbled under the weight of evidence, his lies unraveling like threads in the wind. The truth, a blade sharpened by justice, cut through the fog of deception, revealing a monster masquerading as a savior. And as the echoes of Catherine's voice faded into the night, a sense of closure descended upon the haunted halls of the abandoned house. The phone, once a conduit for the dead to speak, now lay silent in the custody of the law, a relic of a bygone era when the living and the dead walked hand in hand. In the end, justice prevailed not through supernatural means, but through the unwavering determination of those who sought the truth. Catherine's voice, a beacon of light in the darkness, reminded us that even in death, the silence can still be heard, their stories etched in the annals of time for eternity. And as the night whispered its lullaby of peace, the abandoned house embraced the stillness, a silent sentinel guarding the secrets of the past. Story 20. The ancient box lay hidden beneath layers of forgotten belongings in the attic, a silent witness to the passage of time in the old house. Among its contents were faded Polaroids capturing moments of joy and celebration, typical snapshots of family life. Yet as she reached the final photo, a sense of unease gripped Rebecca. The image depicted her very own living room, the familiar couch, the familiar curtains, but the family portrayed was a complete mystery to her. And there, lurking in the shadows of the hallway, a man observed from afar, his presence barely discernible in the dimness. A shiver ran down Rebecca's spine as she scrutinized the photograph, her fingers trembling imperceptibly, setting the edges of the Polaroid in motion. The family in the picture, a woman with golden locks, a man in thick-rimmed glasses, and two children beamed at the camera, oblivious to the looming figure at the periphery of the frame. Frozen in time, their smiles contradicted the hidden danger that loomed nearby. Descending the creaking wooden staircase, Rebecca carried the photo with her, each step echoing in the vast, empty house she had inhabited for the past 4 months. The once grand residence now felt oppressive, suffocating her with its weight. Placing the photograph on the stark kitchen counter, she studied it under the harsh glare of the fluorescent light. The uncanny resemblance between her home and the unfamiliar family in the picture was undeniable. The arched hallway, the ornate crown molding, the bay window casting its gentle morning light. This was her sanctuary, yet these faces were strangers. Enter Detective Morgan, clad in a worn leather jacket that whispered of past investigations. His steely gaze swept over the photograph, methodical and unyielding. Tracing a gloved finger along the Polaroid's edge, he turned it over, revealing a blank back. "What do you know about the previous owners, the Nelsons?" he inquired, his voice a low, gravelly rumble. Rebecca confessed, "Very little. They had already relocated out of state when I bought the house." Nodding knowingly, Morgan requested, "May I take this? Our team might be able to identify the individuals in the photo." Thus commenced a discreet inquiry. Rebecca uncovered that the Nelsons had acquired the property from the Crawfords, who had resided there for 7 years before vanishing abruptly. Prior to them, the Mornos had been the occupants for nearly a decade. Detective Morgan delved into historical records, interviewed former neighbors, and pieced together a puzzle of transient inhabitants. A breakthrough arrived unexpectedly when a retired mail carrier recognized the family in the enigmatic photo. "The Sutherlands," he asserted with certainty. "They lived in that house for a brief year before disappearing without a trace, leaving their mail to accumulate." The Sutherlands' disappearance was a conundrum. 4 individuals gone without a trace. No forwarding address, no signs of relocation for the children's schooling, no trace of their vehicles or bank activity, as if they had evaporated from existence. Forensic analysis dated the photograph to 15 years prior, unveiling subtle clues within the image, the suspended dust motes, the eerie stillness of the subjects. This was a timed photo, the technician elucidated. They were positioned deliberately before the shutter clicked. But if the Sutherlands had orchestrated the picture, who was the spectral figure in the hallway? Advanced imaging techniques unraveled more about the mysterious presence. Tall, masculine, clad in dark attire, his countenance veiled in shadow, yet his posture exuded a sense of vigilant observation. He seemed rooted in place, as though he belonged there, as though he held a rightful claim to the house. A pattern emerged as Detective Morgan unearthed a chilling truth preceding the Sutherlands. A series of families had dwelt in the residence for precisely 1 year before vanishing without explanation. Always after a year of occupancy. Rebecca's tenure in the house amounted to 4 months, a fraction of the ominous cycle. Historical building records unveiled a dark chapter. The house's construction overseer, a reputable architect, had vanished near the project's completion. His replacement, Samuel Whitfield, had finalized the construction. A solitary photograph of Whitfield, a gaunt figure with penetrating eyes when digitally aged, bore an uncanny resemblance to the figure in the enigmatic Polaroid. However, reports indicated Whitfield had perished in an on-site accident, his body lost in the rubble of another construction site. The basement became a focal point of the investigation. Ground-penetrating technology detected anomalies beneath the concrete floor, abnormalities in density that defied explanation. As jackhammers breached the surface, a noxious odor assailed their senses. Beneath layers of soil and concrete, a grim discovery awaited them. The Sutherlands were not alone. Every vanished family lay preserved in the cool, desolate earth. Among their possessions lay a camera, the very device that had captured the Polaroid, and a trove of additional photographs, each portraying a different family, their smiles mirroring unawareness, while a dark figure observed from the shadows. The house was cordoned off as a crime scene, forever sealing Rebecca's connection to it. As investigators meticulously logged evidence, a hidden crawlspace in the attic was uncovered, concealed behind a false barrier. Within lay a cot, photographic equipment, and a journal chronicling detailed observations of the house's residents. The final entry, dated a mere 3 days prior, read, "The new arrival is perceptive. She uncovered my photograph too soon. My plans must hasten." Relocated to a hotel under protective custody, Rebecca was startled awake one night by a ringing phone. A breathy silence greeted her before a click signaled the mechanical whir of a Polaroid camera, ejecting a photograph into the void. The inquiry persists to this day. The house stands silent, its windows veiled in darkness, its enigmas shrouded in obscurity. Samuel Whitfield remains elusive, his existence shrouded in whispers of a bygone era. Some speculate his demise decades ago, while others entertain the notion of his transience to a new locale, under a new guise in a new dwelling. Meanwhile, in a dim chamber, photographs materialize new families, new abodes, new watchers in the shadows. The only certainty is that those who delve into the enigma of the man in the photograph are now under vigilant scrutiny. Story 21. In the quiet stillness of the morning, a mysterious package appeared on Sarah Miller's doorstep. No return label, no tracking number, just a damp cardboard box whispering secrets in the morning dew. It wasn't intended for her. The name on it was unfamiliar, a certain Daniel Whitaker. Common sense urged her to ignore it, to leave it be, but curiosity, that insatiable siren, beckoned her closer. With a hesitant hand, she peeled back the tape, anticipating mundane contents within. But what lay inside was anything but ordinary. A VHS tape, a relic of a bygone era, nestled among shadows, accompanied by a solitary sticky note bearing the ominous command, "Watch alone." Sarah's fingers danced along the edges of the tape, feeling the weight of the unknown pressing against her palm. The worn plastic whispered of secrets long kept, while the note, etched with urgency, spoke of unseen dangers lurking within. As she stood in her kitchen, the tape and note in hand, the world outside carried on its familiar melody a distant dog's bark, the laughter of children, the drone of a lawnmower. Unaware, untouched by the enigma that now resided in her home. Against her better judgment, Sarah succumbed to the pull of the unknown. The VCR, a relic of nostalgia, beckoned her to unravel the mystery woven in black plastic. With a trembling hand, she slid the tape into its waiting mouth. Static danced on the screen, a curtain of white noise parting to reveal a dimly lit room. A lone figure, Daniel Whitaker, emerged from the shadows, his voice a steady murmur in the darkness. His tale unfolded, a haunting melody of innocence lost, truths twisted, and a life upended by forces beyond his control. Detective Eliza Ramirez found herself entwined in a web of deceit and shadows, each tape a breadcrumb leading deeper into a labyrinth of lies. Daniel Whitaker's desperate plea echoed in her mind, a whisper of truth amidst a symphony of deception. The case of Catherine Walsh, a whistleblower silenced, unraveled before Ramirez's eyes. A pharmaceutical giant, Pharmacorp, stood at the center of the storm, its tendrils reaching into the darkest corners of power and corruption. As the pieces fell into place, Sarah Miller found herself drawn further into the tangled web, her world colliding with that of a man wronged by fate. The truth, a fragile thread, bound them together in a dance of justice and redemption. In a hidden storage unit, the final pieces of the puzzle awaited discovery. Daniel Whitaker's journal, Catherine's evidence, and the damning proof of a conspiracy woven by hands stained with greed and malice. Justice, a silent sentinel, rose from the ashes of deception. Executives fell, the truth unveiled, and a man once hunted emerged from the shadows, a ghost of his former self. Sarah and Daniel, two strangers bound by circumstance, stood on the threshold of a new beginning. The wrong address, a twist of fate, had led them to a truth unspoken, a light in the darkness of manufactured lies. The VHS tapes, relics of a twisted tale, stood as silent witnesses to a story of redemption and resilience. Sometimes, in the quiet of the night, the truth arrives in unexpected packages, waiting for the curious souls willing to listen. Story 22, the costume store was nearing its final days, with old items being sold off. Amidst the dwindling inventory, a woman discovered a mask hidden on a dusty shelf. Its delicate features held an eerie, lifelike quality that drew her in. Placing it on the counter, the cashier hesitated, muttering, "That's not ours." Perplexed, she checked for a tag, only to find none. With a nonchalant shrug, she decided to take it home. That very night, a soft sound stirred her from slumber, a whisper of fabric shifting. Startled, she found the mask missing from where she had left it on the dresser. Instead, it now sat ominously on her nightstand, its gaze fixed upon her. The woman, known as Catherine Reed, was later discovered by a concerned neighbor. The front door stood ajar, allowing morning light to pierce the darkness within her home. As Detective Morgan arrived on the scene, the eerie quietude was palpable. The shutters clicked in rhythm as forensics captured the haunting stillness. Observing the room, the detective noticed subtle details: a partially open drawer, a lipstick-stained water glass. Everything appeared ordinary except for the lifeless form of Catherine. The medical examiner, with a solemn expression, noted the uncertainty surrounding Catherine's demise. No visible wounds, no signs of a struggle. Pointing to her frozen expression of terror, he remarked on the inexplicable fear etched into her features. The detective, crouching beside the body, whispered, "Something scared her to death." Catherine, an art appraiser known for her keen eye, had lived a quiet life. Colleagues praised her for her meticulous nature and ability to spot even the slightest inconsistencies. Could her talent for authenticity have led to her tragic end? Security footage from the costume shop revealed a puzzling interaction with the cashier. He appeared genuinely perplexed by the mysterious mask, a sentiment echoed by the owner who denied ever stocking such an item. Visiting the now empty shop, the detective learned of the mask's unexplained origins tied to a deceased collector with a history of strange circumstances. A breakthrough emerged when forensics discovered peculiar fibers on Catherine's fingertips' human hair mixed with an unidentified organic substance. This revelation linked her death to a series of similar cases spanning decades, each involving a victim who had acquired a chilling mask before meeting their demise. Retired from the force, a former detective shared a chilling discovery: a hidden message within the masks, ancient symbols hinting at a ritual of soul transference. An unexpected turn came with the unearthing of Catherine's journal, detailing her growing unease and the sinister truth behind the malevolent masks. The investigation culminated in the revelation of Catherine's cause of death: cardiac arrest induced by sheer terror. But what entity could evoke such paralyzing fear? Surveillance footage from a neighboring house unveiled a figure leaving Catherine's residence donning a disturbing mask, moving with her mannerisms yet somehow distorted, as if wearing her identity as a macabre disguise. Despite a nationwide alert for the missing mask, it resurfaced months later in a distant vintage shop, already sold to an unknown buyer. The case remained unsolved, shrouded in enigmatic darkness. The detective safeguarded Catherine's journal, a chilling testament to an inexplicable reality too bizarre for official documentation. Sometimes in the dead of night, the detective awakens with a sense of being watched. She secures her surroundings, suppressing thoughts of the malevolent mask looming in the shadows. It waits, biding its time to ensnare another unwitting victim, perpetuating a cycle of terror that began centuries ago and persists into the present day. The mask, a vessel hungry for souls, lurks in the shadows, poised to claim its next host with empty eyes fixed on the unknowing sleeper. Story 23. In the stillness of the night, where shadows dance and secrets linger, there was an apartment that lay silent for months. Its new tenants, weary from the weight of moving in, expected nothing more than layers of dust and perhaps some forsaken furniture. However, one door stood defiantly closed, refusing to yield to their curiosity. It was a closet, locked from within, holding onto its mysteries tightly. When the landlord finally coerced the stubborn door open, the anticipation of finding mere old coats or discarded trinkets quickly dissipated. Instead, a chilling revelation awaited them. The walls bore witness to a haunting tale, etched with deep, jagged scratches that spoke of desperation and confinement. And nestled in the corner, a relic of the past, a weathered flip phone, its once vibrant battery now a ghostly reminder, illuminated by a single unread message on the screen. Detective Morgan Shaw, seasoned in the art of unraveling enigmas, stood in the midst of this unsettling discovery. It wasn't the usual scene of violence that sent shivers down her spine, but rather the silent plea of those scratch marks a silent scream echoing through time. "We need forensics here immediately," she instructed her partner, Officer Reed, whose camera lens captured the haunting marks for posterity. "And fetch me the records of the previous tenants." The message on the phone, stark in its simplicity, whispered hauntingly, "I know what you did." The landlord, a man of nervous disposition, fidgeted nervously, his gaze skirting around the closet as he recounted the departure of the previous tenant, a young woman named Emma Caldwell, who had vanished without a trace, leaving behind unanswered questions and unpaid rent. Forensic analysis unearthed a chilling truth embedded within the scratches on the walls, traces of blood, most belonging to Emma herself, a young woman of 28, reported missing by those who noticed her absence. Yet, amidst the familiar DNA, there were two outliers, one unidentified, the other belonging to a man who had supposedly met his demise years ago. "This defies all logic," Shaw murmured, her gaze fixed on the perplexing lab report. Derek Mercer, a man declared deceased following a tragic accident, had left his mark on those walls, defying the passage of time. Emma's apartment whispered tales of interrupted routines, a pile of unopened mail, a solitary coffee mug left to languish in the sink, a bed meticulously made. Her phone records painted a fractured picture, a sudden cessation of calls to her sister, replaced by a barrage of unknown numbers in the days leading to her disappearance. The sister mentioned a mysterious boyfriend, Reed relayed. No name, just descriptions of intensity and secrecy. Surveillance footage, a silent witness to the past, captured Emma's final moments, her entrance into the building followed by a shadowed figure, his identity shielded by a baseball cap, a phantom in her wake. A breakthrough came with the discovery of partial fingerprints on the closet's doorknob, fingerprints belonging to Derek Mercer. "He staged his death," Shaw concluded, delving deeper into the intricate web of deceit and darkness that entwined Emma's fate with Mercer's machinations. The elusive DNA sample led them to another missing soul, Lynette Porter, vanished without a trace, her existence a mere whisper in the winds of time. Her connection to Emma's story unfolded as the pieces fell into place, a shared destiny, woven by the threads of Mercer's malevolent schemes. The investigation unfurled like a tapestry of shadows, leading them to a secluded property owned by the Mercer family. Behind imposing doors, a chamber of horrors awaited them. Lynette Porter, a specter of her former self, kept in captivity akin to Emma's nightmarish ordeal. "He made me watch," Lynette's voice, hollow and haunted, echoed in the dimness. "Said I needed to understand the price of defiance." Evidence mounted, painting a portrait of Mercer's twisted obsession, journals chronicling his thirst for dominance, photographs capturing the essence of his victims, and most damning of all, videos capturing Emma's final moments of defiance, trapped in a prison of fear. The hunt for Derek Mercer spanned across boundaries, his shadow looming large over the landscape of fear he had cultivated. As authorities closed in, a chilling realization dawned: the man they sought was not merely a predator, but a harbinger of suffering, a purveyor of anguish in confined spaces. At last, Mercer's capture at a bus terminal brought a semblance of closure, though his eyes held a glint of something inscrutable, a secret satisfaction known only to him. During the trial, the intricate web of deceit unfurled a meticulously crafted plan to fake his demise, to evade justice, to perpetuate his reign of terror under a shroud of anonymity. The jury's verdict, swift and resolute, sealed Mercer's fate: a life sentence without reprieve, a fitting end to a chapter of darkness and despair. As Lynette Porter stood before the court, her voice strong and unwavering, she spoke of resilience in the face of adversity, of light triumphing over shadows. "He sought to confine us in darkness," she proclaimed, "but while he withers in his cell, I shall bask in the light of freedom." The legacy of Emma's tragedy reshaped the protocol of missing persons investigations, casting a spotlight on the intricacies of human relationships and the shadows that lurk within the walls of rented abodes. And Detective Shaw, keeper of secrets and solver of mysteries, hung the closet door from Emma's apartment in her office a silent sentinel, a reminder of the silent struggles that echo through time, etched in the desperate marks of those who fought to survive against all odds. Story 24. She had always avoided venturing into the attic, finding it a place of shadows and secrets. However, when a fierce storm breached the sanctuary of the roof, she had no choice but to ascend into the forgotten realm. The attic greeted her with a musty embrace, its corners shrouded in layers of neglect, draped in dust and silken cobwebs that whispered ancient stories. Amidst the forgotten relics in the deepest recesses rested an old dollhouse. Its miniature facade held an eerie allure, meticulously crafted with tiny furniture arranged in meticulous detail. Yet as her gaze delved deeper, a sense of unease gripped her soul. The figures within were not lifeless dolls, but intricate hand-carved replicas of her own kin. Each tiny figure mirrored her family members, frozen in time with uncanny accuracy, positioned precisely as they sat in the rooms below. Except for one glaring anomaly, the figure meant to represent her was not seated, but standing by the attic threshold, a silent sentinel. Rebecca Morgan traced a trembling finger along the dollhouse roof, feeling the indentation where the miniature version of herself stood watch. A chill crept through her veins, unrelated to the cold draft whispering through the aging beams. This dollhouse had no place here. It belonged to another time, another place. This was not her childhood abode, but a temporary refuge her family had recently sought shelter in. The revelation sparked a chain of events that unfurled like a dark tapestry of intrigue and dread. Rebecca's distressed call summoned the authorities to the suburban residence, where a family huddled in fear, their sanctuary tainted by unseen eyes and a sinister presence that lingered in the shadows. Detective Sarah Harmon, the lead investigator, initially brushed off the family's anxieties as mere paranoia, attributing the eerie dollhouse to a macabre prank or the fragile nerves of newcomers to unfamiliar surroundings. However, as the investigation unfolded, the intricate details etched into each miniature figure painted a chilling portrait of obsession and violation. The miniature replicas bore subtle features that bespoke intimate knowledge of the family: a father's receding hairline, a son's favored hoodie, a mother's birthmark. Forensic scrutiny revealed fingerprints foreign to the family, and hidden cameras nestled within the miniature eyes peered into the family's private moments, recording their lives with unsettling precision. The truth unfurled like a sinister flower as the investigation unearthed a concealed passage leading to a hidden chamber beneath the house. The makeshift living quarters bore traces of a clandestine existence where an intruder had dwelled unnoticed, observing the family from the shadows, a twisted specter haunting their every move. The puzzle deepened as investigators discovered the house's grim history. The previous owners, an elderly couple, had passed away, leaving behind a legacy steeped in shadows. Their son, Martin Wells, the architect of this sinister tableau, had orchestrated a macabre dance of voyeurism and possession. Wells, beset by mounting debts and a fractured mind, had ensconced himself within the bowels of the house, crafting a web of surveillance and control that ensnared the unwitting tenants. The doll houses that littered his lair bore witness to his unhinged obsession, each a shrine to the lives he sought to possess. In the quiet of the interrogation room, Wells sat, a portrait of calm amidst the storm of chaos he had wrought. His words dripped with a chilling rationale, a distorted justification for his invasive acts. To him, the dollhouse was not a tool of terror, but a means of asserting dominion over a past slipping through his fingers. The psychological evaluation painted a portrait of a fractured mind, a soul adrift in a sea of delusion and possession. Wells had sought to freeze time, to mold reality into a twisted reflection of his desires, turning the lives of others into mere playthings in his grand theater of control. As the gavel fell and justice sought its reckoning, the Morgan family found solace in a new sanctuary, far removed from the haunted halls of their former abode. Yet the specter of Wells lingered in their hearts, a ghostly reminder of the fragility of safety and the darkness that lurked within the familiar shadows. Rebecca, haunted by the echoes of the past, bore scars unseen, wounds that seeped into the fabric of her being. The dollhouses were banished, the miniatures exorcised from their new haven, yet the feeling of being watched lingered, a phantom touch that whispered of unfinished nightmares. The tale of the dollhouse dwells in the annals of darkness, a cautionary fable of unseen eyes and the fragility of sanctuary. In the quiet of the night, as shadows dance and whispers stir, one can't help but wonder what secrets lie hidden in the forgotten corners of our own dwellings, waiting to be unveiled by the light of truth. Story 25: The Hidden Observer. The listing from the realtor made no mention of a basement. The blueprints offered no clue to its existence. Yet beneath the old carpet, a door lay concealed. A handle, heavy and rusted, required the strength of 3 to pry it open. Stale air, thick with the scent of damp earth, greeted them as they descended the steps into darkness. Expecting storage, they found a single chair beneath a swaying light bulb, and on the wall behind it, a row of photographs of them. The Mercer family had embraced the suburban property in the winter, amidst early darkness and barren trees. The aging, 2-story house exuded character and history, they had thought, but they had not foreseen the extent of the house's history, nor its chilling convergence with their present. Detective Sarah Connors and her partner arrived at the scene, the crime unit already securing the perimeter with fluttering yellow tape. Mrs. Mercer's voice trembled over the phone as she described what lay beneath their living room floor. "We must document everything before anyone else descends," Connors instructed, donning latex gloves with practiced precision. Camera flashes illuminated the stairwell as the forensic team captured the eerie scene. The small basement, akin to a standard bedroom, featured concrete walls painted gray. A lone chair was bolted to the floor, under the harsh glow of a bare bulb casting spinning shadows. Yet it was the wall of photographs that seized their attention, 37 images arranged meticulously in chronological order. These date back nearly 4 weeks, noted Connor's partner, studying the timestamps on the backs of the prints. Look at this one, Mrs. Mercer asleep on the couch, Mr. Mercer at the kitchen table, the kids in their bedrooms. No signs of forced entry, no stolen items, just a profound invasion of privacy and shattered sense of security. Fingerprints, mostly from previous owners, littered the basement. The house had changed hands multiple times, each family departing within a year, unaware of the hidden chamber. Interviewing the contractor who renovated the house years ago unraveled the mystery. His denial of the existence of the basement clashed with the evidence. Data extracted from a hidden memory card revealed hundreds more intrusive images, not just of the Mercers, but of past families as well. Audio files recovered from a buried box unveiled intimate conversations held within the house, recorded without the occupant's knowledge. Connors ordered a thorough search, revealing a hidden monitoring station behind the photographs, a chilling testimony to years of clandestine observation. A journal linked to the house's builder detailed the family's lives with disturbing precision. Edward Kelvin, the reclusive builder who had vanished from public records, had become the unseen puppeteer of their existence. The manhunt ended with Kelvin's discovery curled within the house's walls, his delusions painting the families as mere subjects in his private theater. A trial exposed the intricate network of surveillance hidden within the very structure of the house. As Kelvin faced justice, the families fled, leaving behind the house of secrets. Demolished and erased, it lingered as a ghostly reminder of violated privacy. The haunting truth of being watched in one's most intimate moments haunted them, forever questioning if they had ever been truly alone. Story 26. In the beginning, there was only a faint flicker, a disturbance in the baby monitor's transmission. The mother brushed it off as mere interference, but then the audio crackled and a voice softly whispered, "SHHH, go back to sleep." A chill ran down her spine as her heart raced, prompting her to dash to her son's room. However, upon reaching it, her worst fears were realized. The crib stood empty. The window remained shut, the door securely locked. The only anomaly was the stuffed rabbit lying on the floor, its glossy black eyes seeming to stare right through her. Rebecca's screams echoed through the house until her voice grew hoarse, drawing the attention of concerned neighbors who promptly called for help. When the authorities arrived, they found her cradling the stuffed rabbit, swaying back and forth on the nursery floor. 4-month-old Samuel had vanished without a trace. The initial investigation yielded no substantial leads. There were no signs of forced entry, and the security system had been active all night. The recorded footage from the baby monitor showed nothing unusual except for that eerie voice and static. Investigators were left puzzled. How could someone enter a locked home, take a child, and leave without a trace except for disturbing a stuffed toy? Suspicion soon fell upon Rebecca. Her husband, Daniel, had been away on business, and their relationship had been strained since Samuel's birth. Medical records disclosed that Rebecca had sought help for postpartum depression. During questioning, detectives noted her unnervingly composed demeanor for a mother facing such a devastating loss. Gossips in the community flourished behind closed doors. Then a breakthrough emerged. Forensic analysis uncovered tiny fibers on the nursery windowsill that did not match any household fabrics or clothing. These fibers belonged to a rare type of climbing rope, hinting that a skilled intruder might have accessed the second-floor nursery from outside. The focus of the investigation shifted. Security footage from neighboring homes captured a shadowy figure moving stealthily during the fateful night. A distinct footprint in the garden soil matched a specialized boot used by military personnel and experienced climbers. Rebecca was no longer the primary suspect when Daniel returned from his trip, visibly distraught. Unusual calluses on his hands caught the investigators' attention, and he mentioned taking up rock climbing as a stress relief hobby. Financial records painted a troubling picture. Daniel had recently taken out a significant life insurance policy on Samuel. Phone records revealed frequent calls to an unknown number that abruptly ceased before the abduction. As the investigation deepened, the baby monitor emerged as a crucial piece of evidence. Digital forensics uncovered that the device had been hacked, with the signal intercepted and manipulated. The whispered voice urging sleep had not originated from inside the nursery, but had been remotely transmitted to the receiver kept by Rebecca. Tracing the digital intrusion led investigators to a residential basement where they made a startling discovery: Samuel was found alive, under the care of a woman named Elaine. She offered no resistance as she was arrested, her eyes vacant as she was led away in handcuffs. Through old photographs and DNA testing, it was revealed that Elaine was Daniel's first wife, who had suffered a miscarriage years earlier. Consumed by grief, she had monitored Daniel's life online, witnessing him start anew with Rebecca and Samuel. Daniel denied any involvement, but the digital evidence spoke otherwise. Fibers from his climbing gear matched those found on the windowsill, and his boots matched the partial print in the garden. Encrypted messages between Daniel and Elaine detailed their sinister plan. Daniel would facilitate access to the home security system. Elaine would take the child she believed was rightfully hers, and the insurance money would fund their new life together. During the trial, the courtroom fell silent as the prosecution played the enhanced audio from the baby monitor. Alongside the haunting whispers, forensic experts identified Daniel's distinctive cough in the background, placing him at the scene of the abduction he professed ignorance of. The jury swiftly reached a verdict, sentencing Daniel and Elaine to the maximum penalty for kidnapping, conspiracy, and endangering a child. Rebecca and Samuel sought solace in a fresh start far from the shadows of the past. The case prompted a shift in how authorities approach modern abductions. Baby monitors nationwide underwent scrutiny for vulnerabilities, and parents enhanced nursery security measures. Security experts warned of the growing sophistication of crimes exploiting technology against the most defenseless victims. Samuel grew up unaware of the night he vanished. Rebecca safeguarded the stuffed rabbit tucked away in a box in her closet. She couldn't bear to part with it, nor could she confront the glassy black eyes that bore witness to the truth hidden within the whispered voice that pierced the darkness. The monitor had captured the reality, albeit in a way no one had anticipated. Story 27. In the dimly lit apartment, the atmosphere was old, heavy with the weight of time. The aging heating system groaned, the pipes rattled like bones in a restless slumber. It was all part of the building's ancient song, or so she tried to convince herself. But then one fateful night she heard it, a voice soft and distant, weaving through the vents like a ghostly whisper on the wind. It wasn't the normal background hum of a neighbor's conversation, it was something more. It was calling her name. Her heart quickened as she pressed her ear against the cold grate, a chill creeping down her spine. A breath of icy air brushed past her cheek, carrying with it a message, almost playful in its tone. I know you can hear me. Detective Morgan Shaw stood in the center of the empty apartment, a silent sentinel amidst the chaos of the investigation. The forensics team moved around her like shadows, their cameras capturing the remnants of a life interrupted. Alina Reeves, the missing woman whose fate now haunted these walls, had been gone for 7 long days before anyone noticed her absence. The building, with its secrets buried deep within the walls, held the key to her mysterious disappearance. Officer Patel, his voice a whisper in the stillness, recounted the eerie details from his notepad. Alina had spoken of voices in the vents, a warning that went unheeded by those who dismissed her fears as mere echoes of an aging structure. But Shaw knew better as she knelt beside the rusted vent cover, tracing the desperate claw marks etched into the metal. These marks, she realized with a shiver, were not the work of human hands. It was as if something from within had tried to claw its way out. Alina Reeves, a beloved kindergarten teacher with a penchant for nurturing life, had succumbed to a darkness that lurked within the very walls she called home. Her fears, once dismissed as paranoia, now echoed through the empty rooms, a chilling reminder of the horrors that had unfolded within these walls. As Shaw delved deeper into the enigma of Alina's fate, she uncovered a web of deceit and madness that spanned years. The fibers caught in the vent grating, the fingerprint that did not belong to Alina, all pointed to a sinister presence that had infiltrated the sanctity of this once happy home. The recordings from Alina's phone, played in the solitude of Shaw's car amidst the soothing patter of rain, revealed a haunting truth. The whispers, the promises of safety, the lure of companionship, they all led to a darkness that had festered within the heart of the building for far too long. The trail of breadcrumbs left by the deranged watcher, Harold Weber, led Shaw to a revelation that chilled her to the core. A hidden access panel, a secret passage between the walls, a trove of mementos from past tenants all bore witness to the twisted obsession that had taken root within the very foundation of the building. Weber, with his calm facade masking a mind teetering on the brink of madness, had created a world within the walls, a realm where he reigned as the puppet master of his unwitting victims. His arrest, though devoid of resistance, marked the end of a reign of terror that had gone unnoticed for far too long. As Shaw watched Weber being led away, his eyes filled with a knowing glint of madness, she couldn't shake the feeling that the building itself held memories that would never fade. The whispers, the shadows that danced in the corners of the vacant rooms, the cold drafts that carried echoes of voices long silenced, all bore witness to a truth that could never be erased. The apartment building, now a silent sentinel in a world that had forgotten its secrets, stood as a testament to the darkness that lurks within the walls of even the most innocuous of structures. The whispers persisted, the voices of the past echoing through the vents, a reminder that some horrors never truly fade away. And as the new residents came and went, they too would learn the chilling truth that in the quiet of the night the building remembers, and the whispers never truly stop.